We live in a world where dreams often become reality for some, and for others they become nightmares. Where the dreams of the kind-hearted are often crushed by the proud and arrogant ambitions. Having goals and aspirations in and of itself isn't a bad thing, but if acted upon at the expense of others, it can be deemed as evil or morally reprehensible. There is no better story that expresses this like Berserk's Golden Age, where the ambitions of two great men lead to one of the most beautiful and blissful moments you'll see in the story. But at the same time, these same ambitions lead to despair for almost everyone involved. Through beautiful imagery, masterful character writing, and relatable themes such as identity, emotional intelligence, love, friendship, dreams, and ambition, Kentaro Miura takes us on a journey like none other. Allow me to guide you through one of my favorite stories in fiction, as we see how the price of ambition manifests itself as despair through this epic tale. Strap up, sit tight, get your snacks, because this is going to be a long movie, but I promise you, you won't regret watching this. So let's start off with the very beginning of Golden Age. One of the things that I really want to hone in on is the art style when we're first introduced to Baby Guts. Now, the art style is very dreary, it's like a over-accented grayscale. I'm not an artist, so I'm really just throwing words together. But if you see how it's like almost pastel coloring, everything is dark, everything is dreary. You're seeing a bunch of random people hung on a tree, guts leaking out, a pool of blood, and some random mercenaries pull up and be like, this is a ghastly sight, this is an omen. And in that pool of blood, you're seeing Baby Guts. Everyone's looking and they're like, wow, this is morbid. And instantly, Sis, the wife, alleged wife, whoever she is of Gambino, comes out, picks up the baby's still alive. And that is your first experience of the struggle of Guts. That, in that moment, you're thinking, okay, so where is this manga about to take me? Because this is really, really dark. Just the starting of the arc itself is letting you know how Miura is going to visually explain things to you, where you're seeing a ghastly sight, where you're seeing the facial expressions of Gambino. You're seeing a woman who's desperate for a child that just had a miscarriage, have a second chance at being a mother. You're seeing the sacrifice of oneself for the sake of another lead to despair. And if you're going into Guts' childhood, just a lot. There's gonna be a lot for us to handle here. So once we fast forward now, we're getting to Guts. We're getting to his early formative years, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In those years where he's been adopted by a mercenary band. The mother that saved him died of the plague, which is a gruesome way to die. And in one of those moments, you're learning about the character of Gambino. Now, Gambino is very important here. It's very important for Guts' character, because Guts did not have a mother. Gambino was out there fighting in the war while Guts was at his mother's side, holding her hand despite the plague. Guts had no one. He was born with nothing. He was born in despair. So the one thing that he clings to escape that despair is now the man that did not even care to show up for the woman that he allegedly had a relationship with as she died. A gruesome death to the plague. And as we move forward, you're seeing Gambino, and we're studying Gambino. And Gambino, one, is a horrible human being. Let's just start that. Gambino is garbage, all right? I'm not gonna deal with any Gambino. I don't think anyone would ever defend Gambino, but Gambino is trash. So we're watching Gambino, and we're watching Guts be raised in a mercenary lifestyle. Gambino is teaching him the sword. He does not hold back on a child at all. As Guts is helping Gambino and the other mercenaries during a war, Gambino is very harsh. Gambino is very aggressive. Guts is exposed to a world that is full of blood, killing, ruthlessness, lack of emotion, lack of care. For a child, that is crazy for your formative years. So you're gonna see how Guts is being grown and cultivated in a very toxic environment that is genuinely full of despair, murder, and pain. And as we see Gambino, who is someone that's extremely closed off, where his whole identity is in getting money, killing, and protecting himself. That's what the mercenary way is. So as you're seeing Gambino teaching Guts the sword, he's not holding back. Guts is so adamant of proving himself to Gambino, the only positive figure in his life, which is pitiful considering how bad Gambino is. And Gambino, after teaching Guts the sword, Guts finally gets one strike on him. And what does he do? He gives him a grave injury. So much so that he's out of commission. And even the mercenaries are looking at Gambino and they're like, bro, he's like 7. What are you doing? You really cut a 7-year-old? It cut through the bone. What are you doing? Gimmy's like, yeah, you know, I was like, shouldn't have pissed me off. Like, I don't know, man. And it just lets you know that this is your textbook neglectful father figure who really doesn't even want to see himself as a father figure, that sees Guts as just another young mercenary that needs to fill his pockets and don't burden him. That's all it is. Now, as we continue to go on, there's one moment that I really want to hone in on. You can see Guts throughout the entire arc, right? This early stage. He's trying to prove himself to Gambino. He's trying to really receive some form of love and affection from Gambino. And you can tell that Guts is really desperate for that love because the one woman that would have given him that love died. Even though the nurses told him not to touch Sis before she died because she had the plague, he still went out of his way to hold her hand because he's just desiring that connection. Now, the one thing Gambino has given him is this really large sword, which is why he won't let it go. Which is why, even though everyone's like, yo, Guts, this sword is too big for you, he's like, nah, man, I'm gonna learn how to use it anyway. And I'm gonna hone in on this point because I'm painting a picture of Guts' dependence on Gambino here, despite how horribly he treats him. The one act of kindness Gambino ever truly showed Guts, which was out of pure guilt, was the medicine that he gave Guts when he cut his nose, his famous scar right here, the ridge of his nose. And Gambino was like, here's some medicine. Like, yeah, bro. Like, it is what it is. It was so nonchalant, it was so disrespectful. He never even apologized in the first place. But if you look at how Miura does, and this is one of the things I love about Miura, his ability to convey storytelling without dialogue, but with just pure imagery. Look at how Guts reacts. Look at how he reacts to Gambino giving him the bare minimum, like the smallest act of kindness, where he takes it, he looks at it, he puts it on his nose, and he's just like, oh wow, like this is great. Like he cares, yo. Like this is dope, bro. Like you see how excited he is, and I'm like, bro, he's such a little kid, and the bare minimum, like the actual bare minimum, has made him feel loved by such a horrible man. It just goes to show, like, we're shaping Guts in his formative years, and there's two things now that he's clinging on to: that medicine that Gambino gave him, and him teaching him the sword and being able to defend himself. Those are the three things that Guts has from Gambino. So again, we continue on. One of the things that is just so sad is the fact that Guts is now able to contribute to the war. He's now able to kill. He gets his first kill, and he gets money. He wins an award. He wins money for Gambino, and he comes back and gives Gambino his share. He's like, Gambino, look what I won. Like, this is great, right? Like, I've done something for you. And Gambino just casually takes the money, and he's like, yeah, all right, whatever. Guts is happy. He feels like he's accomplished something, but it was also disrespectful at the same time. And what does he do right after Guts does something good for him? He sells him out to this creature. This creature. I'm not even going to say his name because this is, to this day, one of the worst things I've ever experienced in the medium. This creature, I hope he's burning in the fiery pits of hell. You know what? As a Christian, I'm not even supposed to wish that. But honestly, Lord, burn that nigga. I want him out. Burn him. Just finish him. He's got to go. What happens, happens. The rape of Guts is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Excuse me, we're not even supposed to say that on YouTube, I'm pretty sure. The grape of Guts is one of the worst things I've ever experienced. And seeing how the one thing that he goes after is the sword is very telling, and it's something that will be telling for the rest of the arc. It's the one thing that he reaches for to try and protect himself. But at the end of the day, it's a fruitless endeavor. He has been traumatized forever at the hands of Gambino, and the creature explains to him why this is happening. But still, Guts tries to confront Gambino. Gambino lies and he believes him because he's like, there's no way. Right? He gave me that medicine. He gave me the sword. Right? This is the only person that I have that's positive in my life from my perception. There's no way he could do it. So I'm taking you through this journey because what I'm explaining to you is we're building the blocks. We're building the blocks of who Guts is at his formative years. This is the foundation of who he is, because one of the things I love about storytelling and character dynamics and showing us where someone comes from is their actions later on will make sense based on their childhood, right? This is psychology 101, childhood trauma. So Guts kills the creature. We're up. We're winning. This is grand. And a few years pass by again. Gambino loses his leg. Now, here's what I find interesting about Gambino. Gambino has now lost his means to actually provide for himself. He's lost his confidence. He lost Sis. So he doesn't have anything besides being the leader of a mercenary band, but he can't actually contribute. So now Guts is the one that's contributing to him. Guts is now providing for him, and that pisses him off. One of the saddest things I've ever experienced in this arc, Gambino is playing with his dog. Guts gets the money, brings the money to Gambino, and he's like, yeah, this will be enough money for women and wine. And then Guts is like, yeah, right, yeah. And then he's like, and meat? What about the meat? And he's like, meat? Meat? What do you mean meat? For the dog. And I'm like, for the dog? When someone hates you, no matter what you do, you can't please them. They're gonna try and find something to criticize you with. And the fact that he's complaining about Guts not providing enough for the dog, it's like he's always gonna move the goalposts. He's bitter, he's resentful, he's hateful because everything that he is, his identity is gone, right? Guts, who's trying to find his identity in pleasing Gambino, and Gambino, whose identity was in himself, is now gone. All of a sudden, we're going through this toxic cycle. And here's the stupidest part about this whole exchange. After Guts is hit by Gambino for not having enough money for the meat for the dog, the nigga hits the dog. And I'm just like, whoa, I thought you cared about him. I thought it was the meat. But no, it's different. And literally right after that, Gambino tries to kill Guts. He walks into the tent and says, you're the reason Sis died. I hate you. You think you're better than me. And one of the panels that makes me sad the most is seeing Guts just ask why. Because Gambino admits that he sold him out to the creature. And he's like, I hate you. I never liked you. You're the reason everything is wrong. You're a curse. And mind you, everything that I just told you about how Guts feels about Gambino, the one person that was the positive in his life, the one person he tried to find his identity in, is the one that gave him the most pain and suffering and despair. What a cruel irony. That face, that panel, this panel here, where Guts is like, why? You can see in his eyes defeat, pain, suffering. And then he has to kill his father. He kills his father with the sword that he gave him, that he taught him. And now that becomes the one thing that he can rely on. He is chased out by the mercenaries. He's shot in the back. He falls down a mountain and he's laying down. One of the most beautiful panels in the entire series. Oh my God, this panel right here. Peak fiction. Nothing but the moon and the stars and Guts laying on his back, looking up at the moon. And you're just wondering what's going through this little child's mind. And to me, the way I see this is, there's a whole world out there, but where do I belong? And he can see that as the wolves pull up and he's ready to resign himself. But for some reason, he can't help but fight to survive. Why? Because he has one thing with him. Blade that Gambino gave him. And he survives. He fights them off. And he's wondering, where do I belong in this world? And that takes us to the next portion, where he meets the next destination in his journey after his formative years, which is the Band of Hawk. So this is where the story really starts to take off. Guts is now older and he is now a random mercenary in a random mercenary group, and he's just plying his trade. He's doing everything Gambino taught him. He's fighting for his coin. He's fighting for his life, and he's putting his life on the line non-stop. So one of the biggest moments of this early arc is Guts versus Bazuo. Now, Bazuo is shown as to be basically the Shaquille O'Neal of the mercenaries that are fighting right now. Everyone's like, bro, this guy Bazuo, he kills people for sport. This guy is ridiculous. He's huge. He's got this giant axe. Everyone is like, well, who's gonna take him down? And as we know from Guts, he's been training with the sword since he was a young kid. So here comes plucky young Guts pulling up. He's like, yo, man, listen, I can take him. But what I really want to focus on here is the fight between Guts and Bazuo, because there's a character trait that I noticed early where Guts is, one, putting himself into danger, the same way he did with the wolves, the same way he did with Gambino, the same way he did when he killed the creature, is that Guts really doesn't care about putting his life in danger. As far as he's concerned, the only thing he's worried about is his enemy either killing him or him killing his enemy. And that's it. You notice the theme of despair, luck, the omen, him being born in a pool of blood with his mother's guts hanging out, but at the same time, he's still alive. Him getting attacked by the creature, him getting shot by an arrow from Gambino's former mercenary mates. The wolves. Guts just seems to survive. And here with Bazuo, there's a very close call where his axe hits the top of his helmet, but he gets the fatal blow on Bazuo and kills him. And this is all while one person is observing, and that is our next major player when it comes to the story, which is Griffith. But we don't know who he is at that moment, because as we move on, he gets his coin. He ignores the pleas of the, I believe he's a count, let's just say the higher up, who's obviously working in high places, works with the castle, and he's like, hey man, like, why don't you be my squire, bro? Like, you can be a knight just like me, like, come on, dog, like, what are you talking about? And Gus is like, nah, chill out. And one thing that we should take note of here is the fact that when he tries to touch him, Gus is like, no, don't touch me. Like, don't touch me. For anyone that's been to therapy, for anyone that knows about mental health, that's your textbook trauma response. That's a trauma response right there. So for me, I'm taking note of these things and I'm like, wow, okay, so that's deep. That's just obvious. He should have that, right? We move forward, we're at an open plain with a bunch of hills, and then we're seeing this group, these random bandits that are coming after Guts, and they all think they're cool. They think they're Bron, and they're like, hey man, like, let's go steal from him. They try to steal from him, and then we meet one of the characters that I despise, Corcus. We're gonna, just Corcus is trash. And Gus washes them all. And we see a lady knight pull up, and it's Casca, right? Casca is one of the most beloved characters in the story, and Casca, who's supposed to be a great fighter, is also washed by Guts because Guts is just cold. That's really who he is. But then that's when things get interesting. There comes a man with the flowing hair, with the L'Oreal, with the femboy look, the twink of twinks, Griffith, a character that can only be described as an enigma, as a mystery. And here, Guts and Griffith fight. And in that moment, Guts, overconfident, I just destroyed these guys, I could take this guy, is defeated handily by Griffith. Now we're at this point now where everything is different. Guts, his life is on the line. They're probably gonna kill him. He doesn't know and he passes out. But he wakes up and you're seeing another sign of his trauma. And you see the pain, the torment, the memories of the creature and the vestige of the creature getting down on Guts. And you're wondering, like, is this a bad dream? Is he dead? And you see him wake up and you notice that it's Casca that's keeping him warm. Now, Gus is not aware of this because he's floating in and out of consciousness, but that's a big deal. He doesn't know that yet, but we're gonna get there. So he wakes up, he's in this camp. He's in the camp known as the Band of Hawk. It's a giant mercenary group. This is common to Guts. He gets back up, he's still injured. He sees that Casca's the one that took care of him. He wants to thank her, but Casca's like, nah, I'm gonna spit in your face, I don't like you. And one of the things that I love about Casca's character design here is the first instance of Guts noticing Casca, you just notice the dark eyes. You notice her facial expression. She's angry, she's frustrated. She feels upset because she's had to give her body to save somebody's life who tried to kill her and her friends. So for her, she's not with it at all. So you're already seeing her defensive, aggressive character, protective character, the big sister character of Casca. But the big part here that I want to focus on is the fight between Guts and Griffith, because they make a wager. Griffith says, we can fight fair and square. If you win, you can go off, you can kill me, you can do whatever you want. If I win, I get you. I want you. And I was like, whoa, pause, hold on, settle down. Like, that's a little, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've already had that experience. I don't want to do that again. But they fight. And it's a really interesting fight. Griffith has the upper hand. He's dodging everything Gus is doing, but then Gus is like, bro, I'm a street rat. I come from the gutter. I come from the concrete. Like, I'm throwing dust in your eyes. I'm punching you in the mouth. Like, we don't gotta fight with swords. I'm a survivor. I'm a struggler. This is the themes that we've been seeing with Guts in his entire life. But then Griffith gains the upper hand again and breaks his arm. And one of the most iconic panels in the story is this panel right here, where Griffith grabs Guts' face and says, you belong to me now. And in that moment, you're thinking, who is this guy? Who is this character? Who is this angelic, charismatic leader presence that everyone in the Band of Hawk is worshiping, right? And that's just the first instance of the journey of Guts, and the first instance of Guts encountering a man that, one, is stronger than him, but the first person that was able to defeat him and the first person whose ambition will control his life. Now, we go into him joining the Band of Hawks. He belongs to Griffith now. One of the biggest moments that indicates how Griffith views him, because that phrasing, I belong to you is huge. That means a lot of things, but in that moment, we don't know what that entails until they're sieging a castle. They're going through all their plans. Guts is seeing how meticulous everything is. And then Griffith assigns someone who just joined the Band of Hawk as the vanguard, or is it the rear guard? Excuse me. Basically the last line of defense for when they get away. This is the most dangerous job. This is the job that's probably most likely causing a casualty. Most likely, if you're in that position, you're gonna die because you're basically making sure everyone escapes while distracting the enemy. But because Guts is so skilled, because he's so powerful, because he's been surviving for so long, Griffith must have saw that in him when he was fighting the other Band of Hawks and said, nah, this guy can do it. This is why he wanted him. He said, oh, you interest me. I like you. Something's interesting about him. I want him. So that happens. And even Casca and the other Band of Hawks is like, why is this guy getting this high task so early on? How can he trust him so early when he just joined? And Guts does his role incredibly. Even though at the end of the day, like, Guts almost fails in that moment, he still delivers. And they get their big victory. They set everything up. The panel and the artistry of the horses, of them running in the river, of them collapsing on the enemy as they're coming back was fantastic. Guts is a hero, right? And Miura is just painting and showing us this beautiful, just the way Miura draws warfare, horses, battle. It's so clear, it's so distinct, it's so crisp in the paneling. It's just incredible. This is why one of the reasons I love Golden Age so much. So this leads to one of my favorite portions in the entire story, where now everyone is celebrating. Everyone's like, Guts, welcome to the Band of Hawks. Everyone's celebrating. This is the first time Guts has been around people in a long time, as he's been fighting his whole life. He's been on his own his whole life. So now everyone's celebrating. Everyone's trying to get him to drink. And he's just not used to it, all right? He's not comfortable. He doesn't want people touching him. He doesn't want people near him. So this is big for Guts. And Judo, one of my favorite characters, just in manga. He's an excellent character. This conversation with Judo is amazing because it serves to really introduce us to who Griffith is, to characterize us, and it also shows his ability to understand those around him, his ability to read those around him, because he also characterizes Guts in a way. So in this conversation, Judo is breaking down the fact that Griffith is kind of an enigma, because Guts is like, what are you guys trying to accomplish here? Who is Griffith? He seems so unique. And Judo is like, well, there's a lot of different people here. There's people who want money. There's people who want fame. There's people who just want to kill. We're really just mercenaries. We spend our lives killing and in bloodshed. But something about Griffith just makes us feel like we're going on a journey. Something about Griffith is enigmatic. Some people are wooed by his charm. Some people think if we follow him, we're going to get famous. Some people just are drawn in by the man and the charisma. So then when Guts is hearing this story, he's like, well, who is Griffith? And Judo's like, honestly, we don't really know. One day when you think he's the wisest person in the world, he's acting like a 10-year-old boy. One day when you think Griffith stands above all and he smiles and you just feel so empowered, he gives off an air of just very cold and calculated and vicious. But then he's so sweet and kind at the same time. So you're just seeing Judo characterize Griffith in a way where you're just like, okay, so this guy's kind of someone that's out of a storybook. All of these soldiers have banded around one man because at the end of the day, it's a very common feature for men to band around the ambition of one great man. And that's what Judo is really painting. He's painting the picture. And then after that whole soliloquy that Judo goes on, shout out to Stephen A. Smith, he mentions to Guts, and I'm sure you'll find a place where you belong to. Now, this is something that I love because it gives us a call back to when Guts was laying down on the ground after being chased by Gambino, looking up the stars and having that look in his eyes like, what is my life about? What am I here? What am I put on this earth for? The fact that Judo was able to see that in Guts and then kind of provoke that thought in like, well, that's great. What actually am I doing here? What's my purpose? This is why I love the conversation so much, because I really love introspective stuff. But I love characters and I love an author that knows how to write it in a way where he's taking you on the journey. And I was able to just seep into that scene in that moment and look at Guts' facial expressions and Judo's facial expressions and really think about who is this Griffith guy? But the best part is coming after this, because then Guts runs into Griffith. Griffith is naked for whatever reason, right? Shout out to Matt B. We ain't here butt ass naked.
Bro, butt ass naked, bro. Hey, you're talking about your mind?
Right before that, these niggas was like, yes, we're playing with the water. These niggas playing water.
Bro, hey, Hey, look.
Ain't no squirt guns.
Bro, it's 100 degrees in
Yeah,
Texas.
it's hot.
We're butt-ass naked.
No, we're not. No, we're not. No, we're not.
No, not us.
We're not naked.
Not us.
Look at Jay.
Let's splash. Let's have a water fight out of nowhere. Butt naked, by the way. He's still naked, and they're splashing water on each other. Which one cashes in on the childlike charm of Griffith, right? This guy's a war hero. This guy just sieged the castle, and now he's playing with water naked with his newly found toy. And one of my favorite panels, again, this is why I love the imagery and the skill of Miura to bring out so much with so little dialogue, but with one image. And it's this panel here. Everyone knows this panel. Griffith holding the behelit, right? Where he explains about the behelit and how it's something that can grant wishes, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like a good luck charm. And the way he's holding it like a little boy who just found a rock. He's like, hey man, look at this cool rock. Look what I found. It's so childish. He looks like a 10-year-old. He looks like a 6-year-old that just found a big stick in the forest. And it's just so funny because it cashes in on, here is this man that's super serious who just defeated Guts, but now he's showing him this cool rock and smiling. So much so that Guts even blushes a bit because he's like, yo, what is up with this guy? Like, am I being charmed by him? And then instantly after, we're cashing in again on what Judo said, because after that, Griffith reveals his grand ambition. He says, now that you belong to me, you're going to be a key in my big dream, which is me finding my own kingdom, me conquering and having my own kingdom and building my own nation. And with you, I'm going to use you to get to that. It almost seemed as though Griffith was opening up to somebody for the first time and explaining to him that you are my key piece to my goals, to my ambition. And as you see, after that conversation, Guts is like, wow, that's very interesting. That he's standing off by the moat where the water's at. He's looking off into the distance and he's like, you know what? I think I'll stay here for a bit. And then the beautiful moment right after that when Rickard opens the door, knocks him into the water, he's laughing, welcome to the band of honks. Everyone's laughing, and for the first time, Guts has a home. He has a family. He has a place where he belongs, something that he needs to do. He's needed. And it's all centered around the ambition of Griffith. And one of the things that I really want to highlight as well is that I really love this panel of Casca looking down at them, because her face is so interesting. You don't really know what she's thinking, but she's watching and she's observing. It looks like she's kind of smiling, but she's also a little worried. It just had me thinking. I was like, what is going through her mind right now? But I love this type of writing. I love this type of imagery. I love this type of storytelling where you're just thinking. You're like, what does that mean? And he's leaving it up to the reader. That's why I love this so much. And then we end this whole thing off. Guts is now the captain of the Raiders, and he's still kind of getting used to the whole team player thing. So my man's just running in. He's like, man, I'm Guts. I'm with the Raiders. I'm going to destroy everything. But they're running into an obstacle that they just can't seem to defeat. People are running into this little enclave, this little castle cave area, and getting destroyed. Now, Guts wants to go in there on his own, and everyone's like, yo, Guts, you can't do that. Guts is like, nah, I'm going in there. He runs in, and he meets the immortal Zod. Now, this guy is toxic. Zod is built like Shaquille O'Neal, brick house, giant sword, bodies, blood everywhere. And the reader, for the first time, you're thinking like, what on God's earth is this guy? Who is this? And then you're hearing lore about the immortal Zod. This guy's been alive for 100 years. He kills everybody. Nobody can defeat him. So Guts steps in, fights this guy, gives him a good challenge, and all of a sudden Zod's like, ho, 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 alrighty, that's what I'm talking about. We got a fighter here. And then something happens that opens our minds that I don't think any of us were ready for. Just imagine you're in that moment where it's like, wow, okay, to Guts' mind, I've never seen this before. This guy's a giant minotaur beast monster, and I was barely surviving before. Now I gotta fight this guy? One hit, and his whole body's shattered. He's like, all right, man, I don't know what to do. Zod is like, bro, come on, like fight me. I need this. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm just like, yo, he's on some King Von energy. We're just like, no, man, like you can't beat this. And then Griffith pulls up and he's like, wait, hold on. Guts is in there? No. And Casca's like, nah, Griffith, you can't go in there. Everyone's trying to warn him. No. Griffith realizes I need him. Because if he goes, everything's lost. This is your first sign of Griffith really placing real value on Guts. And now it's a 2v1. Griffith and Guts versus Zod, where Griffith is like, Jesus Christ, who is this beast? So they're fighting and they're doing a good job, but at the end of the day, they can't do anything with Zod. Zod is too powerful, he's too strong, and it's their first real exposure to the supernatural, to a world that's much larger than them. And before Zod is about to finish the job, because they stand no chance, Griffith is knocked out, he sees something. He sees the shiny rock that Griffith was parading to Guts and smiling about and giving us lore about. And he sees that and he's like, oh. He's like, oh, okay, this about to get toxic. He said, oh boy, alrighty. He looked at Guts and he said, hey man, listen, if that's your man's, it's about to be a long day for you, brother. I ain't gonna lie. Zod was like, hey man, listen, I ain't gonna lie to you, brother. It's about to be a long life for you, boy. This ain't good. But it's all right. When his ambition falls apart, just remember these words, man. Everything's gonna go to shit. I'm sorry. And he just flies off. Aura farms, giant wings. The art is incredible. Like, again, Miura's imagery, amazing. And he just flies away laughing. And it's in that moment, as a reader, you're thinking, oh, wait, what is he talking about? Despair, the ambition, right? We're painting the themes of ambition and despair. We're starting to get closer to the climax of what we're looking for, but we don't really know what it is yet. And that's just such a beautiful way to enter into the next phase, where we're talking about, again, another one of my favorite things. We're talking about Guts and his introspection.
借りができちまったな。なぜ3年前お前は俺に優秀な手駒を失いないと言った。そのたかが手駒一つのために沈着冷静なお前さんとしては冴えない話だぜ。理由が俺がお前のために体を張ることにいちいち理由が必要なのか。
So now, ladies and gentlemen, we're embarking on one of my favorite portions of this arc. Through this reread, there are a few things that I noticed. There are a few things that really caught my attention. And one thing I really want to harp on, first of all, is Casca and Guts, because at the end of the whole Zod debacle, we notice Casca and Guts already kind of having beef with each other. Guts is running off on his own. Casca's trying to reel Guts in and say, hey, stop being a burden to Griffith. Now, with Griffith being out of commission due to him trying to save Guts from Zod, Casca blames Guts for Griffith being out, and you see a visceral level of emotion from Casca that borderlines on hatred. And Guts feels that. And we start this new portion of the arc while they're in Midland, while they're in the castle, dealing with classism and the royalty, with Guts injured, thinking about the words that Casca said. And this is where Miura takes a different style of writing, where now we're getting into politics, we're getting into classism, like I mentioned before. We're getting into the intricacies of the ambition of Griffith. Griffith wants a kingdom. He wants to gain status in that kingdom, and now we're seeing what it really takes. Griffith and Guts have been injured. Griffith is in bed, but because he is the captain, because he is the leader of the band of Hawks that are accomplishing all of these victories, all of these nobles are now sucking up to Griffith while he's in his sick bed. And Guts, whose relationship with Griffith has always been that of, we're brothers in arms. There's no big divide here, like, yeah, you're our leader, but you know, we're just a band of mercenaries, right? So that's kind of how their relationship has always been, but taking that level of relationship and then entering a world of royalty and prestige and class is completely different. And we are first met with that dynamic when Guts is trying to intrude on all of the nobles paying Griffith a visit while the other band of Hawk are standing outside waiting. And in that moment, Guts is trying to do his thing. He's like, hey man, like, what are we, you know, what's going on here? Like this, why are we waiting to go see Griffith? He's right there, let's go see him. Now, if you take a quick step back, you notice that Guts had ran into some nobles before, and you can see their snooty behavior. Haha, did you really see a beast? A monster? You sure you didn't mistake it for a mutt? And Guts is like, bro, get out of my face, bro. Like, he stomps on his foot and he starts crying. There's all kinds of silly stuff. And you're seeing that bitterness of the nobility, seeing commoners and mercenaries like the Band of Hawk achieve accomplishments. So you're already laying that foundation for the character dynamics and the world building that we're experiencing, and the fact that, hey, we're not just in the battlefield, but we're also in a medieval era. We're still dealing with very old English style of royalty here. So in that moment, Gus tries to see Griffith. Casca's mad at him still like, yo, why do you not care about Griffith's ambition? Why do you not care about what he's trying to do? This is something he has to do to get his goal. And Guts is ready trying to breach that. Unknowingly, obviously, because he doesn't know any better. But Casca ends up punching him in the face. Now, this is toxic. She really swung on this dude. I don't know why she hit him like that. Even Guts was like, bro, that's not the punch of a woman. Like, that's Mike Tyson. I just got hit by Tyson. And Casca cries a little bit, again, because she's so frustrated that what is it about this guy? From the very beginning, from the moment she met Guts on the hill where she had to nurse him back to health because on Griffith's command, she's always been like, why him? What is it about Guts that Griffith is so enamored by? Me, who has stood by his side. Me, who has been around him and helped him with all these victories. Me, who's like second in command. What about me? Why him? Why this ignorant guy? Why this guy who doesn't listen to commands? Why is this guy that always goes off on his own, that's always jeopardizing Griffith? Why him? And it boils to a point where she starts crying a lot out of frustration, right? And we're not mocking Casca. It's just a way of Miura expressing the deep frustration within her, because we haven't really understood where this is deeply coming from. We know on the surface where it's coming from, but there's always something deeper. And with Guts obviously listens because now it's kind of embarrassing. I just got punched because I want to see my friend, but all right, I guess I'll just go swing my sword like I always do. And in that moment, Gus is furious. He's like, bro, this woman, why? Like, what have I done wrong? This doesn't make any sense. So he goes back to what he knows, swinging his sword. But the reason why this is my favorite portion of the manga, I would say second favorite, is because we're getting into very deep character dynamics now. Griffith finally escapes the nobles, and Guts and Griffith are sitting outside of the court, and Guts asks Griffith a question. He's like, you know, honestly, 3 years ago, you said you can't lose such an excellent soldier, and then you jumped to save me from Zod. You're such a calm, composed guy. You have all these goals, you have this ambition. You're talking to me about how you hate these stuffy nobles, but it's all for the sake of you getting your kingdom. But why were you willing to sacrifice that for me? That doesn't make any sense. And this is Guts. He's explaining how he views his self-worth. It's like, I don't think I'm worth this ambition that you have. What's going on? And Griffith says something very interesting that it caught me off guard, and it caught Guts off guard. He said, do I need a reason to save you? Do I need a reason to do that? And in that moment, Guts was like, wait a minute. That's pretty impactful. That's quite a statement. Like, what do you mean, do you need a reason to save me? So in that moment, it was a beautiful thing because you could see Guts' eyes almost light up a little bit in surprise. Like, wow, I didn't know you value me this highly. I didn't know that you felt this strongly about me. And this tails into our first meeting of the king. Now, this guy, the king, freak of nature. And we're introduced to the king, and we're introduced to the king's brother. And this is kind of where Miura takes his time to explain to us the world and the culture that we're in, as the king is going on about Griffith's exploits and how in this kingdom most people are worried about commoners joining the ranks and getting all these accolades because it could affect the prestige of the army. It could affect royalty, where it should really be the royalty, and it should be the nobles, and it should be the counts who are really delivering these great accolades and achievements. But now the king is harping on about the commoner being the cornerstone of the kingdom, and how it's so commendable that Griffith, as a commoner and a mercenary, is able to accomplish these things. And it makes his blood boil to see Griffith out there in the battlefield. So you're seeing someone of royalty look at Griffith in a way that's favorable for Griffith, but then the contrast is his brother Julius, who is a jealous, bitter, pompous aristocrat who at every turn during this whole portion is seeking to look down on Griffith, to look down on Guts. Guts obviously isn't aware of the etiquette, so he doesn't bow on time. So he's ready to beat Guts already. And Griffith is like, yo, Guts, chill. So we have that little experience of classism that I've mentioned numerous times now, because this is going to be a very, very big part of what unfolds later on. This is what Griffith is trying to get into. This is the price of his ambition. We're seeing it where Griffith, coming from a mercenary background, now has to be a master of politics. He has to be a master of understanding the nobility, understanding how they move, understanding their mindset, how to portray himself as kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing per se. And you wonder where that analogy comes from. But as Charlotte comes down, which is the king's daughter, a moment happens. Charlotte is shy. The king is saying, oh, this is my only daughter, I'm overprotective. And for whatever reason, she trips. Griffith catches her, and Julius instantly backs him, like slaps the spit out of him. And I'm just like, all right, well, one, that was aggressive. He was trying to help her. So I don't know why you doing this. I don't know why you're trying to be, toxic. That's just, you're begging it at that point. But Griffith does something funny, because Guts is about to swing, and Griffith is like, oh, no, it's okay. Just another one of my favorite, this panel, again, another one of those faces that Miura draws, another one of those that imagery skill that Miura has. That Griffith makes this face. He's smiling like an evil little boy with blood dripping from his mouth. He's like, oh, I beg your pardon, my lordship. But you look at that face and it's not I beg your pardon, my lordship. It's, oh, I'm gonna kill him. Like, it's over. Like, it's okay. I got plans for you, bro. I got some plans. We got something for you. That's really what that face, that's what that face showed me. When I saw that, he said, yeah, we got plans. We got plans, bro. It was really like, we got niggas. I got niggas. Niggas are coming. That's all I'm gonna say. That's what that face looked like to me when he said that. It was a lot. But you notice in that moment again, the goals and ambition of Griffith rears its head as he takes one pause to look at Charlotte as he's going by, because he saved the shy princess, right? He wants his kingdom. And he takes his time to farm a little bit and look at her in the eyes and be like, yeah, I know you saw that. You know I got you. And I'm just like, yeah, all right. We know what his plan is now. We know this is it. This is falling in line. This guy, you know what I'm saying? This is what he does. But there's a beautiful portion of the series that comes up that I enjoy so much, right? And as I mentioned to you guys before, I told you guys how much I love the panel of young Guts running away from Gambino's mercenaries, laying down on the grass, looking up at that starry night at the full moon. And in that moment, we hark back to that moment, but this time Guts is in a completely different setting. About 5 to 6 years later, maybe even longer than that, and he's looking up at the sky. Starry night, full moon, but on top of a roof in Midland, in that castle-y area. It's in a different setting, but it's the same moment. It's the same thought process, but now he's harping back on the words Griffith said. And in that moment, he's like, well, Griffith just told me, does he need a reason to save me? And I'm thinking about this moment that reminds me of that moment when I was barely alive then, and I'm looking at the same moon and I'm wondering, have I found my answer yet? Have I found my identity yet? Have I really discovered my answer? But for now, there's somebody that's given me meaning. There's somebody that's brought purpose to my life. There's somebody that's placed value on me, real, genuine value on me for the first time in my life. So this one keepsake, this one thing that has protected me my whole life, my most valuable treasure, I will swing it for his sake. And I don't want us to take that lightly, right? This is one of the things that is so important about themes, where themes aren't the end all be all, right? It's not the only thing that matters in a story. But with the characters that you write, the characters should always reinforce the theme of what the author is trying to put forward. And that theme of ambition and self-identity and discovering who you are and doing everything that you can to achieve that goal. That is something that has been displayed here, where Griffith has this ambition, this grand ambition, but he formulates his identity around it. But then Guts, who has no identity besides fighting and surviving, has now found something to add on top of his identity, and that he's willing to do it for someone he calls a brother. And I think in that moment, someone like Griffith, who's really only seen his ambitions and his dreams and his goals, is slowly starting to see Guts as a lot more than a tool for his ambitions. But I don't know if he really realizes that yet. I think he says these things in passing, because a lot of the times we think Griffith has it all together, but then as we see on a few occasions, he also has that childlike demeanor where it seems like, oh, he hasn't really matured at all. He's still a little boy. And the way he's starting to treat Guts is just a little bit different. And I want to take us to a very important part of the manga, where the climax, where things really start to build towards the end, where we have this hunt. And in this hunt, this is where things get weird. This is where the classism gets really bad, because the king has now appointed the Band of Hawk to be the main protectors of the autumn hunt, which is a big deal in the kingdom. Normally it's Julius's White Dragon Knights that are normally the ones that are like the big guardians of the autumn hunt, where the king and a bunch of nobles go out and hunt some dogs. They do a bunch of stupid stuff, whatever. Dumb nobility stuff. This is insulting to Julius. This is a slap in the face. This is like, how dare this lowly commoner mercenary take the prestige of the White Dragon Knights? Our royalty and our nobility is at stake. This is where political violence starts happening, where you see Minister Faust, who is just a rat beyond words. I think it's False or Faust. Townsend can correct me. This rat, this guy's toxic, right? This guy thinks he's Lord Varys. You're not Varys, bro. You're not Lord Varys. This guy thinks he's Lord Varys, and sows a seed in the mind of Julius, knowing that Julius is rattled, and says, hey man, like, this guy, he about to take your kingdom. He about to take everything from you. This is a threat to our nobility. We need to get rid of him. So they hatch a plot to assassinate Griffith during the hunt. And during that time, Griffith is, again, wooing the princess, slowly inching towards his end goal. But Julius has plans to end all of that. He sets up an assassination plot with this archer, and he shoots a poison arrow right in his chest. And in that time, the Behelit, the one that Zod talked about, the egg of the king, is the thing that saves him. And in that moment, Julius thinks, failed attempt. But Griffith sees that, and he said, oh, so now I got a reason to kill him. Now I'm really gonna call the niggas. Now I got it. He said, without a reasonable doubt. He looks at that poison arrow and said, oh, this is expensive. I know where this came from. He said, yeah, it's time to call them boys. And them boys is Guts. That's who them boys is. It's time. He's calling them boys. But I just want to take a pause real quick to, again, go back to Casca really quick, because a lot of the things that I enjoy, again, about Miura's drawing is the ambiguous facial expressions that he draws in characters. And there's a scene where Griffith is playfully toying around with Charlotte, and he's whistling with a leaf and teaching her how to whistle with a leaf. You know, harmless, flirtatious, you would say harmless, he's actually risen her up for his own goals, but playful flirting, right? And they're laughing and giggling. And Casca looks up at them and makes this face that's almost sorrowful, conflicted, frustrated, sad. I don't really know what the exact emotion. There's so many emotions in that one face, which is, again, just a testament to just the ability to convey something without saying anything, which I think is an elite skill when it comes to storytelling. Well, I just think to myself again, what is she thinking? It's the same thing as Casca when she was looking at Guts and Rickard in that water. What is Casca thinking? What is going on in her head, right? Casca right now at this point is just an enigma. We know she's frustrated, but what's going on inside her, we don't really know. So I just really wanted to harp on that because it's something I really enjoy. Then we get to the assassination plot. Griffith obviously knows. All right, Julius gotta go. He crossed me. We packing him up tonight. It's game, set, match. And then he calls Guts into his room. And this is where we see Griffith's grind towards his ambition, towards his goals, where Guts sees him around a library of books, and he's like, Griffith, you read all these books? Like, what's going on here? You're a general, but now you're reading all these books. And Griffith is like, yeah, man, if I'm gonna take over this kingdom, I can't just be good at the sword. I gotta know religion. I gotta know philosophy. I gotta know politics. I gotta even know silly things like cosmetics and cooking, and then again, just another honing in on this ability for Griffith to be so evil, ready to call them boys to kill a noble, but then he holds up a sex book like he's 10. He's like, hey, and this too. Look, you see what they doing? Look, I'm just like, what's wrong with Griffith, man? Who is this guy, right? I just wanted to hone in on that because it's funny. Griffith is like, all right, I need you to kill Julius. We packing him up. I'm tired of this guy. He's got to go. He tried to kill me. He's a threat to everything we want. Get him out of here. And Guts has already decided he's going to wield his sword for Griffith. So he's like, bro, just give me the order. And we packing him up tonight. Then we get to the assassination plot where things get dicey. Guts is watching Julius train his son Adonis, and the way Adonis is being treated by Julius is very similar to the way Gambino treated Guts. And in that moment, you see a moment of conflict. You see Guts being able to relate to Adonis, where he's getting imageries of, oh man, that used to be me, but I can't lose focus. Like, I gotta kill Julius. I can't lose focus. So he's already getting that conflict of emotions there. Guts is only just thinking about wielding his sword, but other emotions are creeping in. A little bit of agency is creeping in. He's like, whoa. Like, we gotta stay locked in. So he jumps in, slashes Julius, takes him down like, bet, job done, job's finished. And then there is an intruder that sees his assassination of Julius, and he instantly, without thinking, stabs him right in the gut, only for it to be revealed as Adonis, the poor boy who was trying to live up to his father and his father's harsh teaching, is brutally murdered by Guts. And in that moment, Miura does something that I think even I didn't realize until I reread it a third time, where Guts sees himself as a monster who just murdered a child, but not just any child, a child that is very similar to him. And as Adonis dies pitifully, whimpering, bleeding, coughing out blood. Guts' face is realizing what he's done. There's an imagery of Guts and Gambino training with each other, only for Zod to come in and stab baby Guts through his chest. And all of a sudden, Zod's face peels back in its Guts, and then Guts sees himself as a monster, and he's just realized what he's done. He's like, oh my god, I've just killed me. I just killed another version of me. Oh my, and then that internal conflict. I don't think Guts has really dug that deep to really feel those type of emotions before. So for him, it sends him into a frenzy and he just runs off. He doesn't even realize that. So he hasn't even taken the time to really process that. But that imagery, that comparison that Miura drew in that moment is powerful. It's strong, because in that moment, it's the first taste of what Guts has to lose by following the ambitions of Griffith, where it wasn't really anyone's fault that Adonis walked in on Julius, because at the end of the day, Julius deserved to die. Julius tried to kill Griffith. He just got his lick back, but now there's an unfortunate casualty, which is a common theme in this arc, of unfortunate casualties at the sake of people's ambition. The despair that goes over Guts and Adonis, and now people that cared about poor Adonis, like the guy who was taking care of Adonis before. There's a lot of sadness coming out, and this is where things really start to unravel, because at that moment, Guts escapes, he's in the sewer, he's still reminiscing on that horrible scene, that horrible thing that he just witnessed, that horrible thing that he just did. He's trying to find Griffith, and he runs into Casca and the band, and Casca's normally really hard on Guts. They're at odds. Casca notices something different in Guts, and he's like, is Griffith here? And Casca's like, he's wounded. Why does he look like, what's going on? He's like, oh, he's not here. The life in Guts is gone. Like the vibrancy in Guts is gone completely, and he's just sauntering away to get back to his master, to tell him he's completed his task. I swung my sword for your sake, Griffith. Please validate this, because this is a terrible burden to bear. And the saddest part about this is that as he walks up to Griffith, Casca stops him, shows the first real genuine gesture of care by wrapping up the wound on his arm, which I thought was really sweet from Casca. And both of them go up to overhear a conversation that Guts and Charlotte are having outside the fountain from an event. And this is where things change. And I want to read this directly. I want to read this directly from the book, because this is important, right? Griffith is saying this to Charlotte. With no relation to social status, class background, whether it suits them or not, people yearn for a dream. Sustained by a dream, hurt by a dream, revived by a dream, killed by a dream. And even after being abandoned by a dream, it continues to smolder from the bottom of one's heart, probably unto the verge of death. A man should envision such a lifetime once, a life spent as a martyr to the god named dream. And Guts is just listening. Ultimately to be born and then simply to live for no better reason, I can't abide by such a lifestyle. And in that statement, Gus's eyes open, right? I'm gonna just show it to y'all here. You see this? Look at his eyes. See that? His eyes open right there, and that shocks him, because he doesn't really know. It's the first time he's heard Griffith speak like that, and I think for the first time, he's thinking about my friend and someone that I just sacrificed a piece of me for, as talking this way. Do I have a dream? And then here's the nail in the dagger, and I want to read this again. Charlotte asks, I imagine all your friends too must have come so far with you, attracted by that charm, because Charlotte is now getting rizzed up by this man who's aura farming. But Griffith is like, to me, a friend is something else. Someone who would never depend on another's dream. Someone who wouldn't be compelled by anyone, but would determine and pursue his own reason to live. And should anyone trample on that dream, he would oppose him body and soul, even if the threat were me, myself. What I think a friend is one who is my equal. And as we end that portion, as that statement happens, you can see the distance that Guts feels from Griffith. You know what? Let me put it down. Tom's gonna show it here. The distance right here between Guts and Griffith is palpable. That statement has completely isolated Guts from Griffith. Right after he just wielded his sword, as he just said he's going to wield his sword for Griffith, Griffith basically, what's the word? he demoralizes Guts. He crushes that relationship that he had with Guts with that statement. Because at that point, Guts is realizing, do I have a dream of my own? Griffith doesn't see me as an equal? Is that all I am to you? Am I really that far away from you? I thought we were closer than that. All of those moments after the psychological damage he's just taken from killing a child that's very similar to him, that's a lot to take on. And in that moment, it's moments like that that redefine a friendship. It's moments like that that set things in motion that you can never take back. And this is where the story really starts to get serious, deep, introspective, and very, very complex.
いい眺めだな。こうして眺めてると、なんだかあの明かり一つ一つに連中のそんなちっぽけな夢とか。
でもそうだな。そうやって一人一人が小さな火を持ち寄ってここに集まっているのかもしれないな。
グリフィスというでっかい炎にな。でもな、ここに俺の火はね。
Now I think it's time for us to focus on Guts and Casca. Griffith's statement doesn't just affect Guts, but it also affects Casca. Griffith up to this point is this magnanimous character, this character of ambition, this character of cunning, will, unbreakable pride. He just seems someone that's so unattainable. After the statement he makes to Charlotte, you can see the distance between not only Guts, but also Casca, as you can see Charlotte falling for Griffith in Casca's face. Again, the imagery that Miura likes to portray. It just shows, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't like what's happening. Now we're moving on to the next campaign where things get interesting for Guts and Casca, as a lot of people don't like this plot line, and I think it's okay. I think it's very realistic, but we find out Casca's on her period. In this big campaign, now that Julius is away, Griffith has this big moment. This is a moment for him to really achieve the goals that he was talking to with Charlotte and Guts. The goal of his kingdom is at hand. So Casca in this moment in time is struggling with the common vulnerability of a woman. And sometimes we don't think about the fact that women can run into this issue during battle. This is a natural thing that women struggle with. Me as a guy, we can't fully empathize because we just don't have them, right? It just doesn't happen. So she runs into I'm gonna use the word fearsome for the sake of the way it's framed, but add-on is garbage, so this guy's garbage. But this takes us to a journey where Casca's weakness and vulnerability is out in the open. Guts comes in to save her, bodies add-on, but then because of Casca's weakness, she faints and falls down a cavern, a cave, whatever it is, right? She just falls down into the water and Guts has to go get her while getting shot. So at this point, Guts and Casca are isolated. At this point now, we have a chance for those two to finally be alone and to have a discussion, because if you notice in the previous section, Casca's starting to notice little things about Guts. She's starting to pay attention to him a lot more. The fact that Julius was assassinated and then she looks at Guts' wounds, she's realizing something is happening with Guts and Griffith and I don't know what's going on. Now in this moment, there's a lot of moments that I want to highlight that I like because it's important for the characterization of not only Guts, but for Casca, especially Casca here, where we're going to get into her backstory. Because at this point, Casca has been saved by the person that she's furious with, the person that she hates. She emphasizes that where she's like, why did it have to be you? Why did you have to be the one to save me? I hate this. This isn't fair. And Guts this whole time is like, bro, this is why women can't go in the army. This is ridiculous. But he also sympathizes with her saying, man, women have it hard because she got to go through a period during a battle. It's a nice characterization for Guts. But then at the same time, it's like, bro, why is she bugging, bro? Why is she throwing knives at me? Why does she swing at me? It seems like, yo, bro, there's nothing I can do right with this girl. And I know, brothers, we've all been there. We can't do nothing right. We just can't do nothing right with this girl. She just crashing out nonstop. Guts is like, what's wrong with you? Can you just at least tell me, why are you this way? Why did you join the Band of Hawk? And this is where stuff gets really good. This is where we start getting into the meat and potatoes of the story, because we see Casca's backstory as this person that was sold off by what can only be described as horrible creatures of a parent. Sell her off to some random noble. The noble tries to sexually assault her. Griffith comes in and saves her, but then gives her the power and the will to fight back and then eventually kill the trash noble. Hooray, he's dead. We all hate sexual predators. This creature needs to die, and now he's dead too. And the other weirdo that Casca's gonna talk about in a bit. But the key to this is that Casca received a opportunity in a dream due to Griffith's ambition. That's the theme of this video is just the ambition and how people get caught up in that ambition. And Casca was ensnared by Griffith's magnitude. She almost has a similar like exposition of Griffith's character the way Judah did, where it's Griffith's a commoner, but he's a miracle. He's someone that just seems to gather everyone around him, and we just keep winning after winning. He gave me reason. He gave me purpose. This dream of his is what's made me me. It made me fight. It gave me character. It gave me life. It gave me identity. So to Casca, Griffith is everything. Griffith is a deity to her. And as she's explaining this to Guts, Guts is slowly realizing why Casca was so angry at him in the first place, because of what Griffith has done for her. But in this moment, there's also something that I find interesting. There's a moment with Griffith, right? And this is where we start to get characterization with Griffith that explains his statement to Charlotte about him only seeing someone as a friend if they share the same ambition and dreams, like the type of dream or the level of dream that he has. Where we see, again, the fourth creature, I don't know what it is with Miura and creatures and these type of creatures, right? This guy, this old man, this freak boy, nasty nigga. Like I had to break protocol. Nasty dude right here. This guy's a sick creature. Anywho, he's got a little legion of little boys that he likes to play around with. YouTube, I know I can't say that, but we just got to be real here. This guy's disgusting, and he gets what's coming to him. But Griffith sells himself out for this guy for the sake of money. And this is all while Casca is viewing this, and Casca, who's now enamored with his dream, catches Griffith washing himself after the experience. And she asked, why, Griffith? Why would you do something like that? I don't understand. And something that was mentioned to us earlier on in that flashback is this image of this little boy who was basically a knight in training. He was 10 years old, and he just loved Griffith. He loved knights. He wanted to be a knight in training, but they find him dead and nameless on the battlefield. And Griffith reminisces and reflects on the fact that his dream is killing people. His dream is ending the life of a little boy who had a dream, and questioning whether that dream he had, was his death the end of that dream, or was his death part of his dream? And did he die as a small sacrifice for his dream? And you can see it weighing down on him. That boy must have loved knights. That boy looked at me as a hero, and it almost vindicated him to step forward and almost accelerate the timeline. So as you see him shack up with the creature and sell his body for a vast amount of money, as he explains to Casca, you can see the monologue that he goes on, where it's almost as if my dream is going to kill hundreds and thousands of people. I don't regret my actions, but people are going to die. I'm going to build my dream on a pile of corpses. So I need to do whatever it takes. And if all it takes is me selling my body over losing 100 soldiers, then I might as well do it. How can I remain unclean while everyone else's dreams are being exposed and extinguished because of my grandiose dream? Who am I to think that I remain unclean? And it doesn't matter, because this isn't going to be easy. But the thing is, as he's speaking that and he's saying these things to Casca, and Casca struggling to understand, you can see him tearing the skin off his arm. And you can see how he's fighting and struggling with despair in the face of his ambition. And that's when you can really see the cost of what it takes. So when you think of these words that Griffith is saying, and you compare them to the words that he said to Charlotte, I can't consider somebody a friend if they don't know the weight of what it takes to achieve something that I'm trying to achieve. I can't relate to anybody unless you suffered what I've suffered to get to where I'm at. Otherwise, there's nothing for us to talk about, because everyone views me as a hero. Everyone views me as this miracle. Everyone's laying their life on the line for me to achieve what I want. So no matter what happens, Griffith is always alone because everyone else is looking up. Meanwhile, he has to look forward. People are looking up. So at that point, for him, he hasn't processed the fact that it's possible to have friends that don't have the same dream he does, that have the same magnitude of dream that he does, because that's all he's ever known. His dream is all he's ever been. His dream is all he's ever wanted. So of course, for him, the only one that would make sense to be a friend of his is someone that shares the same burden, because everyone in his life either looks up at him or looks down upon him that he has to conquer. So now we're back to this point, and Casca's like, after he said these words to me, I decided that I want to be the sword that accomplishes the dream of Griffith. I want to be used as his number one tool So she is submitting herself under the dream of Griffith and under the idea of who he is, of what he's done for her, and said, I want to help this man be everything he wants to be. And the reason she hates Guts is because it seems like he's only worried about himself when he goes off on his own, where Griffith is now throwing away things he would never throw away for the sake of him. Griffith is saying, I want you. He's never said that to anyone else. So for Casca, she's like, you're taking everything from me. Everything that I wanted to be, you're taking it, and then you're not even grateful for it? Like, yo, F you, bro. Like, yo, nah. Like, she's like, put your hands up. She's always trying to scrap with him. Always trying to throw hands with him. She's hit him like 8 times. But in that moment, Guts understands. In that moment, it's the first time Casca's really gotten vulnerable. It's also the first time that Guts has really sat down and heard her out. It's the first time that they've actually had a conversation where they can relate to each other to a certain degree. Now, Guts is like, all right, well, now I understand you. I'm going to do what I can so you can be back with your master. But then this is where everything happens. This is where Adon and his band of freaks pull up, and it's 100 soldiers against Casca and Guts. And in that moment, Guts decides, Casca, go back to your master. And the art in this is incredible. When you look at this panel of Casca standing behind the towering figure of Guts, but in front of Guts is the legion of men that are there to kill them, you can clearly see that Casca is now seeing Guts in a different light. Guts is now protecting Casca's dream. The thing that she asked Guts to do for Griffith, Guts is doing for Casca. I just found that beautiful. And in that stance, in that moment, as Casca leaves, Guts finally finds himself in a situation he's always been in, to fight for his survival. To be like, okay, now it's just me, and it's my sword, and all these thoughts, and Griffith, and the murder, and the child, Adonis, and just all of this stuff that's in my mind, I get to just slowly zone out, and I can just do what I've always done. Survive. Fight. And as you see, as he starts to take down more and more men, he's like, sooner or later, these thoughts are going to go away. Sooner or later, everything around me is going to disappear but the beating of my heart. And that is his safe place. That's where he goes back to who he is. And he just loses himself in the absolute carnage, bloodlust, and destruction of the men in front of him. And obviously we have the famous moment where Casca and Judo and the Band of Hawk, they find Casca and they run back to Guts. And Casca finds Guts still alive, laying back on that tree. And it's a beautiful moment because Casca has now seen Guts in a different light. They're back at the camp. Guts is alive and they're healing Guts and everything like that. Judo gives Casca the elf dust. And now Casca's starting to slowly realize that there's more than Griffith. There's more than just her out here that are searching for their identity, that are looking for their identity. And as everyone has settled down, as everyone's calming down, she goes to look for Guts. And this is where we get into my favorite portion of the story. I love this portion of the story because as a man, introspection is just who I am. I love introspection. I love just delving into your motivations and what it is you're doing for your life, your motivations, your purpose. And in this portion called the Campfire of Dreams, Guts and Casca meet up again. And I think there's a few things I want to highlight. One of the things is we notice, due to Guts' history with sexual assault, he doesn't like anyone touching him. One thing that we know about Guts' history with sexual assault is the fact that he always has his sword with him no matter what, and he's always almost cradling it or holding it because that's his safe place. That's his safety, right? This is like someone's favorite blankie, right? Look at the way he's holding it when Casca pulls up to him. And even when they're talking, he's still holding it. But there's something that I find very interesting, very subtle that Miura does, is as Casca's applying the elf dust to Guts' wounds, Guts flinches for a second and then allows Casca to touch him. Now, Guts doesn't let people touch him. We've seen that highlighted when that guy tried to make Guts his squire earlier on when he killed Bazuo. He doesn't like people touching him, period. Point blank general. But it seems the only person that's actually really allowed to touch him is Casca. And now at this point, after their conversation, it's different. Guts is allowing her consciously to do it. He's not threatened. And in that moment in time, Guts is now opening up to Casca the way Casca opened up to Guts. But this time, Guts is realizing, my second in command wants to own a clothing shop in Wyndham. There's a guy in my camp that wants to marry a girl, but the girl doesn't want to marry a bum soldier. The girl wants to marry a high-ranking soldier, so now he's aiming to be a high-ranking soldier. It seems that everyone in this camp, everyone here, they all have dreams, they all have goals. They're all like little fires that gather together. And as Miura expands the view and we look over the mountain, I might as well just pull it out. Hold on. This right here is incredible. Campfire of Dreams. As they're standing upon the hill looking at all the little campfires of the Band of Hawks. The imagery that Miura paints as small little dreams in the inferno of the ambition of Griffith is masterful writing. It's masterful artistry and illustration. It's something that as anyone that just enjoys to be immersed in art, this is something that you can truly appreciate, where Guts is highlighting that everyone's dream is like a little fire, and everyone's little fire is all gathered around the inferno of Griffith, and how even Casca is a part of that little fire that's in the inferno of Griffith. But then he explains that all I've ever had is my sword. All I've ever known is fighting. The only thing Gambino taught me was to fight. You have this reason to fight, which is Griffith and his dream. I've always left the reason for me to fight up to other people. And if you notice in Master of Sword, he said the same thing, but he said he'd do it for Griffith. But after Griffith's comment, now he's realized, I think it's time I stop leaving my reason to fight up to people. Now I find my own reason. He paints himself as someone that's warming himself up by the embers of everyone else's dream in the inferno of Griffith. That this isn't his place. He's just stopping by because now he needs to find a reason to fight. We believe it's because he wants to be on equal footing with Griffith, who he considers his friend. He now wants more out of his life, and I think that was inspired by Griffith's statement, and I also think it was inspired by Casca. The ambition of Griffith has now stoked the fire of ambition within Guts, where it's like, well, now I need to find my dream. Everyone has their dream, everyone has their reasons for doing things, but now it's time for me to find a reason outside of just surviving. And I just find that beautiful, because as I'm reading it, I get a little teary-eyed, because there's moments in time in life where we're just thinking to ourselves, why do I do what I do? What was I put on this earth for? What is my destiny? What is my gift? How can I use the tools before me to do something, right? And it's that flame of ambition that's within every human being, that they just, it's always something that's deep inside, that you're always thinking like, what is it that I need to do? What is it that I'm gonna do with my life? And the reason I love this so much is because this is something I'm all too familiar with. For the longest time, from my teens to my 20s and now in my early 30s, I always ask myself, what is my purpose? Why was I here? Why am I here? To see that moment in its totality was just incredible for me. And it just highlights the beauty and the skill of Miura to capture the introspection of Guts, but it also highlights the brilliance of the character writing of Guts. It is phenomenal. And then the Casca and Guts situation is so interesting, because now Casca's listening to Guts, and it's the first time Casca's really understanding him. She's like, wow, this guy is different. Like, he's a lot different than I thought he was. Griffith pulls up now to the camp, and as they're walking down, Guts is again pushing Casca now towards her dream. He's respecting Casca, like, go to Griffith. That's your master. Go back to your master. You're the sword, right? Go back there. Casca's now kind of thinking twice a little bit. She's like, yeah, like, I'm with Griffith, but I'm kind of curious about you now. Like, I'm a little curious, and that's culminated more as we go into Duality, where this little portion wraps up, this little portion of Guts and Casca's relationship and dreams and ambitions, where Duality is this impenetrable fortress that hasn't been captured in many, many years, and this is Griffith's chance to really stake a claim in the kingdom. This is his chance. And in this moment, we see the action of Guts, knowing that this is probably his final campaign. Casca now caught in between the two minds of, wait, Guts, is he leaving? It sounds like he's leaving, and Griffith focusing on achieving a goal that he's always wanted to achieve. But there's this character that's now back again, and it's the creature. We hate him. I'm not giving him a name like I give all of these freaks. I don't give any of them names. They're just creatures. So this is Creature 3. Say hi to Creature 3, everybody. Hi. Right? He's dead. He's gonna die soon. Right? I spoiled. I don't care. He's died. Anywho, Guts versus Boscone is incredible. Boscone is goated, loyal, strong, noble, powerful, real fighter. Guts versus Boscone is incredible. It is the highlight of how powerful Guts has become. His name is now famous because he killed 100 men. So now Boscone is like, wow, this guy is built different. And in this moment, this is where everyone's ambition is starting to come to a heat, where Guts and Boscone are fighting. Gus's sword cracks due to wear and tear, and then Immortal Zod just standing up there just farming for whatever reason is like, LOL, causality, have a sword, Guts, let's end this fight because we need something to happen. He gets the sword and he kills Boscone. Casca takes over the castle because of Griffith's grand plan, and everyone gets their big victory. Everyone's excited. But at the end of Doldry, there's another moment between Guts and Casca. Casca's been poisoned by this freak of nature, Dawn. She obviously overcomes him because Casca's goated. We don't need to get into that. But one thing that I really want to highlight again is the ending scene as they hoist their flags in Doldry. Guts lifts up Casca and it says, all right, let me take you down so we can celebrate our victory. And the way Casca is now looking at Guts is completely different. The way Guts is treating Casca is completely different. It's as if I acknowledge you, you acknowledge me, we are a team. But now Casca is in the back of her mind thinking like, wait, hold on, like, is he daddy? Like, do I want him to leave now? Because at first Griffith was daddy, but now this is daddy too, and I don't know which daddy I want. I'm just wilding, I'm sorry, but I just needed to say it that. Because we're at the point now where Casca is now getting caught up in the ideas of both of these men, except now she kind of knows Guts at a more personal level than she does Griffith, because people don't really know much about Griffith, but Casca's really starting to know Guts, and now she is getting caught between the ambition of Guts and the ambition of Griffith, and who am I more loyal to? And it's obviously still Griffith right now, but I'm starting to feel Guts, and I don't know what's going on. And this is how things can get really messy when you're getting caught in the ambition of two great men who come to a head as we move forward into our final pieces of the story.
あの時言ったはずだ。お前は俺のものだとな。あの時と同じ。剣で自分をもぎ取っていけ。
This portion of the manga is where things really start to come together. This is where we're now seeing Griffith's goals and ambitions really come to fruit. They have just now captured Doldry and they're on their way with a triumphant return to Midland. Things are, the word I would use is magical. Things are magical. Everyone's cheering, everyone's jumping. They're coming into a hero's return. Griffith, Lord Griffith, Guts, everybody is now a superstar. Everybody's Hollywood. Griffith is like 2013 Bron. Like, he just two-peated. Everyone's like, this guy's the GOAT. Charlotte is waving in the stands and Griffith can't even hear her. Casca's being praised. Everything is happening the way Griffith wanted it. And the one thing that we focus on during this, that Miura really focuses on, is Guts viewing Griffith in all his glory. Guts is standing there thinking, wow, Griffith, this is everything that you dreamed of. This is everything that you wanted. You're so amazing. And Guts is just watching Griffith in awe and seeing him in all his glory and be like, this is exactly what I expected of you. As we move on to the whole celebration, now we're at the ball where all of the rough, rowdy mercenaries are now in nobles clothing. Casca's in a dress, Guts is in a weird, stuffy fit. All the noble girls are pulling up to Guts, Griffith, Corcus, Rickard, Pippin. All the men are looking at Casca now. Griffith is in his element. He's used to this. The women are asking him all kinds of different questions. So this is a completely different world. The Band of Hawk have finally made it. And Guts again is like, this is amazing. Look, he's a natural. Corcus is living his life. Corcus is like, yeah, man, we up now. We about to be nobles. Like, yo, we up. And it's so funny because in all of this glory, there's still a clear separation between Guts and Griffith. And Miura makes it a point to show that separation. First, we start off with the fact that Guts steps outside because he's like, bro, I'm not built for this. I'm still already not, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not here. Like, I'm not here for all of this. And Casca herself is now realizing, like, this is a little too stuffy for me. I need to take a step back. And then we have a moment where we're still cashing in on the growing relationship of Guts and Casca. I just want to stop here and talk about how funny Guts looks when he sees Casca, when he actually gets a look at her in that fit. And he's just like, damn, girl, like, damn, why you look so good? Like, yo, Guts was like, yo, Guts couldn't believe his eyes. He's like, Casca really a baddie. Like, wow. You could almost play some Jordan Poole music. Busta Rhymes, baby, if you give it to me, I'll give it to you. There's a great conversation that happens as a result of this, where Casca is like starting to become a lot more feminine around Guts, and Guts is, their relationship, as you've seen, Casca's no longer rowdy, aggressive, very masculine in a way towards Guts. Now she's becoming more soft and open and vulnerable, and, you know, using him as an excuse to get away from all the, you know, creepy noble men that are really trying to vie her attention. In this moment, you see Guts is still in that mindset of, I just wanted to see everything with my own two eyes. I just wanted to see what Griffith has accomplished. I wanted to see what these 3 years have culminated in. And Casca's hearing him talk about leaving again, and she's now even more confused. Like, is he really gonna leave? Like, I don't know if I want this. There's a plot line that's brewing beneath all of this, and that's obviously the classism that we've talked about before, where the Queen Mother, who's been jealous and hated Griffith, she's always hated commoners, your textbook, oh, these are peasants, they have nothing to do with our royal blood. They've all been shrouded in the darkness and plotting on Griffith. And we're gonna go back to Bodega Varys here, because before all of this happens, Bodega Varys thinks he's slick. Julius died, but he's like, I'm still gonna turn people against Griffith. But there's one thing that happens. Bodega Varys catches the eye of Griffith, and Griffith sees and says, I know you. I know what you are. But it culminates in a whole fact where now that Griffith has succeeded in capturing Doldry, and the king is about to give him a grand reward, and everyone's like, okay, we can't let this commoner get away. Now we're gonna really poison him and assassinate him. And one of the funniest scenes I remember is Minister Faust, aka Bodega Varys, is in the middle of that plot. They're about to go through with everything. We're gonna poison him at the ball. Everything's gonna work out just fine, and we're gonna go back to our status quo. And Bodega Varys receives a note. And in that note, you can obviously tell what's in there, but for me and for the public, I thought I'd just, give us an example of what it says. Townsy, if you can put it on the screen here, it clearly says, I know what you are. I got your daughter. Tighten up, fuck nigga. From Griffith. That's what it says. I can't confirm or deny where I got this from, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it said. And Bodega Varys was terrified. So we fast forward back to the ball. Griffith takes a sip of his wine as the king toasts to the new White Phoenix. They're now gonna be nobility. Their lives are about to change forever. Griffith's goal has finally been achieved. Griffith is standing and looking around, and he looks at Guts, who's on the outside behind a glass window, and they both smile at each other. A very beautiful panel that's symbolizing where they're both at. Griffith is smiling happily and peacefully, while Guts is smiling, but in a weird, regretful, like, man, you really did it. I'm proud. But this is probably gonna be the last time we see each other. And the imagery is beautiful, but it's short-lived because he takes a sip of the goblet that has the alleged poison and he passes out. And the Queen Mother and Bodega Varys, they're all gathered around in their council as Casca's crying, and they're like, we did it, guys. It's it's complete. We've done it. We've won. Now, mind you, Guts has already found the assassin and finished him. Destroyed him, which means Griffith obviously knew, especially with the note that we've beautifully translated here. But then something that I find hilarious happens. Bodega Varys is sweating while they're all celebrating and drinking wine. He said, you know what? I think I'm just gonna dip. It's a little late. Like, my wife needs me, right? My daughter, saying I gotta bounce. Like, I gotta dip. So he dips. And then they burn alive. And I'm like, this is great. We don't even need to focus on it. Griffith is standing outside ore farming. The queen's like, Griffith, how could you? She's trifling. She was sleeping with the king's brother. She burns. Deserved. Hold. Right? That's it. We don't need to dwell on that. She gotta burn. But this is also another big moment where we can see Guts and Griffith. This is one of the things that I really loved. Again, it's Miura's imagery and how he just draws facial expressions and emotions, where Guts and Griffith are talking after they have released Elise, which is Bodega Varys' daughter. He has a conversation with Bodega Varys and he's like, LOL, you really thought you had something, but you didn't. And Bodega Varys is like, I'm actually terrified of this guy. How can he be so cunning, so calculating, but then smile so innocently? Like, I gotta stay away from this guy. I'm never gonna be with him again. But then they have a moment. Guts and Griffith have a moment where Guts is like, so you've really done it. Like, you did it again, man. Like, this is amazing. Like, you just keep surprising me. You're full of surprises. And then Griffith is like, do you think I'm cruel? Like, am I a bad person? And this is funny because Griffith would never show this side to any of the Band of Hawk, but with Guts, he's always vulnerable with him. He's always looking for affirmation and validation from Guts, as if to say, you're the only one I can do this with. You're the only one I trust with this. Am I cruel? And Guts is like, nah, man, like, what are you talking about? Like, I've killed 100 people. Like, this, nah, man, like, this is all for your goal, right? Come on, dog. Like, this is for your goal. It's not a big deal. Why are you even asking me that? That's dumb. That's Guts's mindset. Why is he asking me that? This is for your ambition. This is what you've always wanted to do. remember your speech with Charlotte, right? What are you talking about? Griffith is more like insecure about it, which is not like him, and it's not what Guts is used to. So that's a nice little teaser for what's coming up next, because we move forward after that moment. Griffith shows up to Casca and the band. He's still alive. Everyone's excited. Everyone's happy, and everyone's moving on. They're having the funeral for the Queen Mother. They've been promoted. Things are about to really take off. This is the start of Griffith's true ambition, true goal. And in the wake of this, Guts wakes up one morning, it's snowing, and he decides it's time for me to dip. This is it. Griffith has got everything he needed. It's time for me to find my dream. Casca wakes up in the morning, sees Guts leaving. Corcus and Judo are walking in the snow as well. And now Casca's saying, don't leave, please don't leave. Casca's now decided, I don't want him to leave anymore. He can't do this, not when everything just started. So Judo and Corcus overhear this, and they're like, we should talk. Let's have a talk. And this is where I love this portion so much. I think I love it almost as much as Campfire of Dreams because of two people. I'm a Corcus hater. I hate Corcus. I think Corcus is garbage. Murphy has tried to defend Corcus, although she hates Corcus too. Amber Elise, we were in a big Berserk stream talking about this. She loves Corcus and Brago loves Corcus. And I'm just like, Corcus is trash. Tritz loves Corcus. And I'm like, Corcus is still trash. But rereading this and looking closer as I'm making this video, I'm looking at Corcus's dialogue. And I'm seeing how Guts is trying to explain to Corcus that I want to have something of my own. I've always swung my sword with the mindset of wanting people to look my way, always looking for someone to look at me as I try to survive, because all I've ever known is swinging a sword. All I've ever known is surviving. All I've ever known is killing. And I haven't bothered to try and learn anything else. And I've always done that in order to have someone look at me. But when I ran into Griffith, it's like I wanted him to look at me so much because I was so enamored with who he was. But now it's different. It's almost as if he's abandoning everything for this one dream, and I'm living inside that bubble. And now I don't want to just swing my sword for the sake of someone else anymore. If anything, it's starting to piss me off that it feels like Griffith is always looking down on me when I want to stand by his side. I can't do this anymore. I want to be different. I want to have my own thing. I want to have something that's big. I want to have something that's mine. And I want to be able to present it to Griffith and be like, hey bro, we're brothers. We're just like you. I understand you, Griffith. I understand you. We're friends, and I want to stand side by side with you. I want to be a brother in arms. And I want to point back to the point where Guts and Griffith were walking back to the tavern to see the band of Hawks after they had killed the kidnappers that had taken Bodega Varys' daughter. And there is the imagery of two friends shadowed out walking in a forest, almost arm in arm. And it just seems like two lifelong friends walking through one narrow path. And I just looking at it, you just think, wow, these guys are so close, but at the end of the day, they're about to be so far away. And seeing Guts talk like this about what he wanted to do, what he wanted to achieve, he seemed childish, childlike, a childlike dream. This is the ambition that he wants to chase. I want to be like Griffith. I admire this man, and I don't want to just play second fiddle. But Corcus loses his mind. Corcus is like, bro, you're stupid, you're dumb, not everyone gets to be special, not everyone gets what they want, so why do you think you're so special that you can be Griffith? You can't. It doesn't work that way. There's people that lose. And the whole time Corcus is crashing out about how stupid Guts is, how unrealistic he's being, how he needs to be more like everyone else, like he needs to realize he's normal. I'm realizing Corcus is talking about himself. Corcus had to give up his dream. Corcus is living in the dream of Griffith, and he's found it comfortable. He's found it great. He loves the nobility. He loves the women. He loves the galore because it's something that he feels like he can get as long as he's under the umbrella of Griffith. But what Guts is doing is saying, hey, I think I'm better than that. I want to be better than that. And in a way, Corcus is taking that like, well, you think you better than me? I had a dream too, and I had to give it up. So what makes you different? What makes you better than me? Corcus is bitter. And for a while, I was just like, bro, he's trash. But I'm looking at him, I'm like, okay, so he's still trash, but at the same time, I get it. I actually understand it. It's probably painful for Corcus to see someone that he looks down upon and present themselves as better than him. That drives him insane. But here's one thing that I love after this conversation, because Corcus crashes out and leaves. Judo, who probably is the best side character in this entire story. Like, Judo is incredible. The conversation Judo has with Guts after that is that of Corcus had a dream once. He had a band of thieves and he got bodied by the band of hawks and he submitted to Griffith. A little bit above average in swords and knives and things of that nature, and even me, I fell in line. All of us have had a dream at one point and some people have given it up. What you're doing does sound a little stupid. It sounds childish, but I also get it and I understand. And he's trying to like process what's going on with Guts through him. And he's going back to the conversation with Guts and he was like, well, I guess I was wrong. I guess you really haven't found a place that you belong. And it's almost as if Judo's really connecting with Guts and trying to understand him, but also giving the reader exposition of what the audience is thinking, what the Band of Hawk will probably think. And it's just a great character dynamic that Guts and Judo have, where it's almost as if Judo's the one person that can read Guts' mind, where most people fail to really understand Guts. Judo seems to be the one man that has understood Guts from the very beginning, which is why I love him so much. And it's funny because Judo's like, hey bro, so if you gonna dip, like, you gonna take Casca with you, bro? Like, I see how y'all been. Like, I ain't gonna lie, like, she been kind of looking at you, dog. I'm just, something happened. And Gus is like, yeah, you know, something will happen, but that's Griffith's girl. And then Judo says something that I enjoy quite a bit that paints the perfect picture of Casca and Griffith's relationship. Judo's like, Casca can't be with Griffith. Griffith has one massive goal, and his route to that goal is Charlotte. Casca doesn't love Griffith. She worships Griffith. It's in a way that she could never be able to attain someone like Griffith at all. It's just impossible. So she has to fit where she fits. And to me, she's better off with you than Griffith, because the life that she's going to live is always going to be in the shadow. She's always going to have to watch another woman be with Griffith. She's going to have to watch as Griffith does not view her as a possible candidate. That's a sad life to live. And even Guts agrees. And as they're having that dialogue and that conversation as they're walking up, Guts first says, yeah, I understand, but Casca's more of a comrade. And then he's like, you know what? That's cap. I'm lying. She's for Griffith. And I'm gonna push her towards her dream the way I'm pushing towards mine. It's almost admirable, but you know, he's like, yeah, man, I love Casca. She's great, man, but I gotta do this. Like, I gotta follow my dreams. And then we run into the big scene. Rickard, Pippin, Corcus, Judo, Casca, and Griffith are all by this tree as Guts is about to leave. And the Band of Hawk, they're begging Guts to stay, except for Corcus. Corcus is still like, yo, I hate you. I honestly wanted to kill you a few times, but I hate you. The dialogue from Corcus, again, I'm talking a lot about Corcus, even though I think he's trash, but because he's just really good here. Corcus is saying, it's that look. It's that stare. As if you're in pain all the time. As if none of us are also in pain. Like, none of us have dealt with something. Why do you always look like you're suffering? Why do you think that you're better than me? Why do you think your pain is more than me? Corcus is again internalizing everything Guts is doing because it always seems like Guts is suffering. And Corcus is like, why do you think you have the right to look that way and feel that way? He's just a hater. Corcus is just a hater, man. If you want a definition of hater in the dictionary, look up Corcus and you found it. He's just a hater, but you understand it. You understand it, and that paints the perfect picture because at that point, Griffith's eyes have changed. He's like, so you gonna leave? You just gonna leave me? You think you can, after everything we done, we just started, bro. What you mean you gonna leave? But then you're seeing a different side of Griffith. Rash, non-composed, almost like a child throwing a tantrum. You can't leave me. I own you. You're mine. You can't leave my grasp. I won you with the sword, so you can only leave with the sword. And even Casca's like, guys, we don't have to do this. And Judo like, nah, step aside. This man's business. Rickard, this is man's business. We're mercenaries. We got to do it the right way. And that's the way they're going to do it. Guts steals his resolve. He's calm. Griffith, I wouldn't say steals his resolve. I'd say Griffith is more anxious and eager to keep Guts, as almost as if he's realizing, like, wait a minute, like, what's going on here? He can't leave. At one moment, Griffith views Guts as a cherished friend during that scene as Guts kills the kidnappers, with all the vulnerability that he shared with Guts, from the water fights to the do I really need a reason to sacrifice myself from you, all of that till now possessive, controlling. I need him. He can't leave. It's like he's struggling between his ambition and his genuine affection for Guts. And in that moment, he's completely conflicted while Guts is completely resolved. And in that clash, you get one of the most beautiful panels in manga history. It is Guts and Griffith facing off over Midland with the sun rising, snow everywhere, beautiful ambiance, beautiful art, incredible art. One of the best panels we've ever seen in the history of manga. I will stand on that. And during that time, Guts has already got it in his mind like, I have to do this. And he looks at Griffith and you can see the resentment in his eyes. Again, Miura is incredible at just painting emotions and pictures of just frustration and anger and joy and glee. So many different emotions. And Griffith is looking bitter and resentful and angry. And Guts is like, but this is exactly how it's supposed to be. You said that I should destroy and oppose anyone that tries to take my dream away from me because that is who you consider a friend. This is how it should be, right, Griffith? And he's resolved to doing this while Griffith sees that resolve and it makes him angry. And in that point, he's trying to calculate how he can strike Guts, but also keep him alive at the same time because he's so vital to the Band of Hawks. Meanwhile, Guts, steel, calm, composure, is prepared for the clash. And as they go in the clash, Griffith gets hasty. He goes for it. He's like on guard. And in that moment, Guts washes him clean, breaks the sword right on the shoulder, packs him up, throws the bag on his shoulder. Take care, man. It's been fun. Dips. Real Sigma. Real masculine energy right here. Just like, bro, take care, bro. Hit him with the OJ. Take care. You know? And in that moment, Casca, during all of this, Casca's, wait. I don't want him to leave. Wait, I don't want him to leave? Guts? Do I like him? Like, she's just sitting there Casca's completely lost at this point. And as he's leaving, she looks at Griffith. Griffith is down and defeated. And then she looks up at Guts, says Guts a little bit, and then screams, Guts, no, don't go. And in that moment, she never gets to really figure out her feelings because he's gone. And one of the saddest things that you see at the end of this battle is Griffith down on 2 knees, sword broken, completely devastated and shocked because he's lost for the first time in this 3-year journey. Here lies Griffith, a man full of ambition, a man that was heralded as a god, an angel of death, a miracle, a hero. Everything that Midland, Casca, Guts, Griffith, Rickett, all of the Band of Hawk, all these superlatives that they said about Griffith. And here are we seeing him now, at the bottom. Griffith has now hit rock bottom. And not only has Griffith now hit rock bottom, but then he's done something that he can never take back. Griffith is a fascinating character. One moment he is a superhero, the next moment he's a child. One moment he is the bastion of morality, next moment he's the devil. One moment he's possessive, overprotective, next moment he's cold, calculating, and composed. And in this moment, now that he's lost Guts, he's everything he didn't want to be. He's someone that has lost his most important tool. He's someone that's lost his most important soldier, but more so than ever, he's someone that has lost his friend, his best friend. And normally when someone hits rock bottom, when someone goes through something catastrophic that they cannot understand and process, they go to the closest thing that will give them reprieve. And what does Griffith do? Griffith goes to Charlotte and said, if I have nothing, if Guts is gonna leave me, then I need to resort to default settings. What is the one thing that I still have? My ambition, my dreams, my goals. I've lost Guts, but there's still an opportunity to be taken. So Griffith decides to be a guy from the 90s playing Genuine in the window as it's raining in front of Charlotte's window. And Charlotte, who's mourning the death of Julius and Adonis and struggling with everything that's going on, her mother just burned in a fire. Well, not really her mother, but the queen mother burned in a fire. So everyone is just sad. She's depressed and she sees Griffith standing outside with a boombox. And she's like, Griffith, why didn't you come sooner? It's raining. Griffith's eyes are not even looking at this girl. He is in so much pain. He's only thinking of, I need to get what I came here for. And we don't even have to go through the superlatives. At this point, Griffith scoops her up. He's like, nah, I'm just gonna hit. I'm gonna make her mine now. So now that I know she's mine, the next step is my dreams and ambitions. Griffith completely abandons any plan, any sort of cunning, nothing. It's just reckless, childish, stupid, trifling, all of the superlatives not superlatives, but all of the words you can think of that would describe a trifler, and that's what Griffith is. He trifled, and he trifled in a way that's actually insanity. My man went full spread eagle on Charlotte for no reason, and Charlotte, poor Charlotte, don't even know what's going on. She's just like, well, I like him anyway, so I might as well let him hit. Little does she know that there is a servant girl watching Griffith do all of this stuff, and he gets caught. The king rushes into the room, crashing out. He's like, Charlotte, there's no way you let him in. Pulls out the covers, and all of a sudden you see the bloody stain there, and then it's over. The guards come and grab Griffith, the guards come grab the Band of Hawk, and everything falls apart. And here now we see this horrific scene of Griffith in a dungeon with the king and some guards. And the king is livid. The king has lost his mind. He is crashing out. He was like, man, I used to believe commoners could be something, but for some reason, everybody was right about y'all. Band of thieves, all you do is take, and you took the one thing that mattered. Now, mind you, let's get into this, because I will not be referring to the King of Midland as the King of Midland. He will now be creature number 4. So creature number 4 is like, in this world, there's nothing but darkness. It's cold, battlefields, all that stuff. And the one thing I had in this world was the warmth of my 17-year-old daughter. I've protected her my entire life, and you deflowered her, you creature of the night. How could you? Mind you, this rhetoric he's saying is a little bit questionable. I'm like, yo, what's up? Like, to be fair, yeah, if somebody popped in the night and took my daughter's virginity, I think I'd be pretty mad too. So to be fair, he's a hype. But the way he was talking about it was a little wild. I was like, what's up with this dude? Then Griffith says something that can only be classified as pure online Twitter Reddit rage bait, where he's like, LOL, you wanted to hit your daughter. We all know what you are. You're a freak of nature. The king loses his mind and crashes out. I'm talking full scale strike whipping. I'm talking this. We're going back. I don't even want to say what was about to come out of my mouth. All I know is that he whipped the spirit out of him. It was so bad. The whip was coiling around his body as he's hanging. Even the guards like, damn, nigga, yeah, what? I was like, what's going on? I was like, what's going on with him? Tore Griffith to pieces. Griffith is still looking at him with those eyes, and I gotta calm down, because as I was reading, I was like, man, he tearing Griffith up, man. He really doing it to him. There's a statement that the creature number 4 makes, where he says, you know, you probably did this because you're young. You had your dreams, you had your ambitions, and if you really had just bided your time, you probably would have achieved it all, but maybe it's because you're young that you did something this stupid. And he said, you know what, I've had it. Brings this disgusting creature, who we call creature number 5. And he says, you know what, creature number 5? I want you to torture this man for a year, make sure he lives, but I want you to ruin his life. Destroy everything. And he leaves, creature number 4 leaves, saying, this is where everything ends. Your goals, your dreams, your ambition, it all ends here. It's over. It's destroyed. I hope that you live to suffer for this entire year regretting your actions. This is where the Hawk has fallen. And I just found that so profound, that the moment Griffith loses his friend, the one thing that was kind of holding him together, he defaults to ambition and goals. But that wasn't what got him to where he was. It also ended up being the one thing that led to his untimely demise, and which has led to pure despair. We can only call what's happening right now is the despair, desperation, the look in his eyes as he claimed Charlotte, the look in his eyes as Guts left, the look in his eyes as he is hanging there, beaten, bruising, bloody, skin torn from his flesh. It's just it's a sad outcome for someone with so much ambition, so much goal, so much cunning, so much potential to end up where he's at. And it's not just Griffith that pays the price for this, it's also the Band of Hawk. Because the Band of Hawk are now hunted, they are ambushed. Casca rallies the Band of Hawk to get away, and we do a whole time skip. And in that time, as Guts leaves the camp, Guts is accompanied, well, not accompanied, but he is visited upon by our favorite Skull Knight. Now, the Skull Knight is a great character, but we don't get much of him in this arc. We kind of just get little tidbits where he pops in, says a few prophecy gimmicks with some old English. But what he says to Guts is important. He says, Guts, you're a struggler. You're gonna struggle. That's all you've ever known. Struggle, contention, survival, fighting. That is your destiny. The sword is the one thing that will keep you alive. But in a year's time, everything's gonna fall apart. There's gonna be blood. There's gonna be death. There's gonna be despair. There's going to be everything. This man that has now fallen will lead to an event in a year that will change everything forever. And you, my friend, might just survive because you are the struggler, my boy. You're the struggler. And he just aura farms and leaves. And that's really what the Skull Knight is. He comes in, drops a few witty one-liners, aura farms and leaves, and he does some cool stuff as well. But that's really the main point. He's just establishing the guts like, man, despair's coming, brother. But I'm still cold. And that's really how he just dips. And I love the Skull Knight because that's really what he does. And we fast forward, Guts is traveling throughout the years. He's fighting Silat, who I find very interesting. I'm not going to spend too much time on Silat, but Silat is a really cool character. He has these cool rings and these wiggly swords, and he's obviously Persian, Arabic, Ottoman Empire type stuff, so really cool. And you see, after a year, Guts is really just traveling the world with his sword, dominating and being goated. But then he hears, during this festival, as he fights Silat and defeats Silat, of the Band of Hawk being hunted. And he's like, wait a minute, nah, that doesn't add up. I thought everything was cool. And we fast forward to Silat being hired as an assassin to kill the Band of Hawk. Guts comes in, saves him, and then reunites with the Band of Hawk. And this is where we see the aftermath of what's happened with Griffith, where the Band of Hawk have been hunted for an entire year. Casca has taken up the mantle. She is literally on her last legs, leading this entire group of men. The only reason they're even alive is because of Casca's grit, determination, and strength. And as Guts comes back and saves the Band of Hawk, everyone believes this is a new lease on life. Now that Guts is back, we can save Griffith, and we might be able to rebuild the dream. This is it. This is amazing. Guts and Corcus again, who's still hating, by the way, but he does say some things that are profound. Judo, Rickett, Casca, all of them, they're all like, oh my God, Guts, you're back. This is amazing. And Corcus says something that I find very interesting. Before we get to that, actually, Judo asked Guts, did you find what you're looking for? Have you figured it out? Guts says, I'm not sure. But if there's one thing that I do know is that the only thing that feels true to me is swinging this sword. I've only been in the mountains training for most of this time, but I think I finally figured out what is true, what is real to me, and it's swinging this sword. You can interpret this as Guts finding meaning in his life by swinging his sword. Like a swordsman dedicating his life to the way of the sword. That is his identity. So the mastery of his sword, the defeating of strong opponents, the traveling around the world with his sword and seeing where his sword is taking him, seems to be something that he's come across that has really been his identity, who he really is. And Judo's like, good for you, man. That's a great answer. And I find that really endearing to see Guts finally with a purpose in his life, no longer walking aimlessly, but standing on his own 2 feet. He seemed a little bit happier. Corcus is like, hey man, look, that's great and all, but don't think you came back, because honestly, you dipped and you weren't here for us at our worst, so why should I ever accept you? And honestly, cold from Corcus. He's spitting. He's hating, but he's spitting. He's right. That leads to a conversation with Casca, where Casca's like, come here, we need to talk. And Casca crashes out. This is back to the way things used to be. Casca hating Guts, Casca being so furious with him. How could you leave? Why did you do this? This is all your fault. The same rhetoric that Casca was yapping about at the beginning of this arc, but this time it's a little different. Guts is like, what are you talking about? I only did what I had to do. I did what Griffith would have wanted me to do. What are you talking about? And Casca says something. Griffith had to make himself strong for the big dream that he had, but no one can sustain, no one's heart can be sustained through ideals and ambition alone. You made Griffith weak. Matter of fact, Griffith is no good without you. And that hit Guts like a ton of bricks. You see Griffith in this panel kneeling in the snow as the footsteps of Guts is walking away from him. And it's almost as if Guts is viewing himself as abandoning Griffith instead of actually trying to be there for him. So much so that Guts can't accept it. He's like, that's not fair. I was just doing what he said. You were there, Casca. You saw what he said. You saw it. And it's almost as if he's struggling with the fact that he believed he made the right choice, that I need to follow my ambitions, but my ambition led to Griffith's despair? Griffith's ambition led to despair, to lose me? And now Casca, who's caught in the middle of these two, has finally just given up. Casca's like, I know you're right. I know you're right. It's not fair, but now I don't know what to do. I was supposed to be Griffith's sword. I was supposed to be his woman, but I knew I couldn't be his woman. But then you came in the picture, and then you became his sword, and then you took my dream away from me. And then at that point, I realized I couldn't be his woman either. And then you leave me when I'm trying to figure out what's going on with you. And then I don't know. And then she just completely crashes out because her dream and her ambition was stolen and destroyed. And then she's only left with despair. And it just seems these three characters have all had these goals and ambitions and these dreams that were founded on ideas, but not really reality, because they couldn't see what was in front of them. All three of them couldn't see what was in front of them, and now all three of them are now in despair at the exact same time, which leads to Casca wanting to commit suicide and killing herself, and also Guts obviously accepting the stab wound from Casca as Casca's trying to fight him. And it's just so heavy because Guts saves Casca, and Casca's like, you idiot, you're a fool, look what you've done to me. You're such an idiot. You're so stupid. And she's crying. And then Guts is like, come on, baby, don't cry. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you start playing that. What music, what would the soundtrack be? I don't know, man. Some Kenny G and some saxophones. Like, they're just looking at each other and they're crying and they're vulnerable. And then they start kissing. And it's like, finally, all two got together. We know what's been going on. Judo would be like, let's go. It's about time. And they have a beautiful romantic moment. And this is the scene where now Casca and Guts are having their famed sex scene by the waterfall, right? And they're kind of exposing themselves to each other. Casca is seeing all the wounds and scars that she's had, and she's still questioning her feelings. Are her feelings true? He's distracted me from my feelings. Like, it feels like if I accept my feelings for Guts, all my feelings for Griffith would be a lie. She's just struggling and processing that. But they end up still, having sex. And in that moment during the sex, something interesting happens. Guts' trauma shows up in a way where he's viewing Casca now as his younger self and him as Donovan. Excuse me, I can't believe I used his name. Oh, I'm disgusted. Creature number one. He views himself as creature number one. And in that moment, he now is reminded of the fact that he killed Gambino. And in that moment, he has a severe trauma response where he can only see Casca as the small version of himself. And he proceeds to try and choke the life out of the small version of himself because he's so angry at himself for what he did to Gambino. And it shocks Casca, and the whole moment is ruined. And I think one of the most beautiful moments in the story is that because of this moment and everything's been ruined, Guts is now crying in front of Casca and in front of anyone for the first time in his life. He opens up about how he was assaulted by creature number one, how he killed Gambino, and how he doesn't know what to do with himself. And in that moment, Casca's witnessing this man who's never, ever shown any deep sign of emotion break down before her very eyes. And in that moment, Casca realizes, finally, you have shown me who you really are the way I've shown you who I really am. I can accept you. And maybe where I really belong is in your heart. Maybe this is a dream that I can live in and I can attain with my own two hands. And in that moment, they go back to sleeping with each other, but it's no longer just sex. Now this is what we call making love. This is romance. This is deep passion. This is a connection. This is two souls connecting into one. And you can see it in the imagery. And I'm not trying to get vulgar here. I'm being very, very poetic here. This is a beautiful scene of vulnerability, a beautiful scene of acceptance at everyone's core. The scars and the wounds that Guts has got for Casca and the scars and wounds that Casca got for trying to protect Griffith's dream, they finally let everything go to be with each other. And this is their first real taste of joy, peace, and being alive with each other. And I think the way Miura ends this whole portion off is so beautiful. The one scene that we remember when Gambino gave Guts that medicine to put on his nose, the smile, the peace that he had, his sword by his side, one of the only moments where he's not actually clinging to his sword, it's actually by his side, and he smiles. And then you see him and Casca cuddled up after everything that's happened. And that's really the moment that he remembered. Wow. Genuine care, affection, love. I felt it again. That's amazing. So everything is happy now. Everything is happy-go-lucky. Guts and Casca now have a newfound relationship. Guts has now opened up to Casca about his dream, who he believes he is. He has now thought on what he truly wants to achieve with his life, which is the way of the sword. As we've mentioned before, Guts now views himself as not only just a sword itself, but the sword is an extension of him. In every battle that he's had, in every single instance of his life in which he's needed to survive, he's had this sword by him. So for him, based on his conversation with Goto, he cannot see himself as anything other than the man that wields the sword. So for him now, because he views himself in this way, he wants to pave his way. He wants every battle that he fights to be a battle that he chose and not a battle that someone else chose. He shares that with Casca and then tells Casca, hey baby, listen, I know I'm a man of ambition now, but I need you to come with me because I'm not done having you yet. And I was like, all right, man, so you talking a little reckless. I said, I didn't even know he had it in him. He said, I don't want you 100 times. I want you 1,000 times, girl. Like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, hey, all right, man, I'm trying to find me a Casca too. All right, I need to settle down, my bad. Anyway, so we move on past that, and now we're with the Band of Hawk again, and everyone's excited. It is time to regain our ambition. It's time. We've got Guts, we've got Casca, the final piece is Griffith. As long as we get Griffith, and then we nurse him back to health, everything will go back to the way they used to be. And that's when everyone is now excited. That's when they're drawing up plans. That's when everyone is taking splits off, where we have the injured camp that is staying behind with the poor little Rickard and all the other injured people. And then Guts, Casca, Pippin, Judo, Porcus, the main gang, they're all going out there to rescue Griffith. Now, from that moment on, this is where things get very interesting, because we turn to Griffith. We turn to his backstory, where we see Griffith in his childhood in a town, in a lower town, where you see nothing but brothels and children running the streets. Very similar to King's Landing, actually, in Game of Thrones, right? The little upstairs thing. And at the top, you see something that looks like the Red Keep, which is actually just a random castle. And in that moment, Griffith, as a child, sees that castle, and like any child, decides that is what I want. That's my dream. But that flashback is cut short by a darkness that Griffith feels. Everything's dark. He can't see anything. How long has it been? I've lost track of time. I can't feel my body. I feel like I'm floating. But there's one thing that keeps me conscious. There's one thing that I'm seeing, and it's the face of Guts. Now, one very unserious individual would say, pause, that's gay, but you know, we're not unserious, we're adults here, and that's not what is happening here. This is a man who has lost everything and is barely conscious and has been tortured for an entire year, but the only thing that's keeping him in touch of reality, the only thing that's keeping him sane, is this visceral range of emotions: anger, love, sorrow, pain, bitterness, warmth, tenderness. So many different emotions Miura expressed in this dialogue that is keeping Griffith afloat. And Miura mentions that it's almost as if none of them quite hit the feeling, but all of them are all implied, and it all makes sense at the same time, which kind of give you the feeling of a tempest of emotions. Like, this guy Guts really left a number on Griffith. And then we see a ghastly scene. We see a scene of now his eye opening, and we see just a small, and I'll just show it to you guys here, this small panel of a broken, shattered, mangled body laying on a stone brick floor with a dim light in the corner to show just what really has happened to Griffith. It's really gruesome. I'm not gonna lie, it's disgusting. So you see a man that has fallen from grace in such a way that he's barely recognizable. And as we see the Band of Hawk, Casca, Judo, Pippin, they've all gathered the band. They meet up with Charlotte. They've gone to the Tower of Rebirth, and now they're there to find poor Griffith. And in that time that they find him, mind you, creature number 6, who we have actually killed now, thank God, he's actually, I think he's creature number 5. I've lost count. There's too many creatures in this manga. The point stands. When Guts and Casca come across Griffith, what they see is something that can only be called a nightmare. His tendons have been severed, his tongue has been ripped out, his tendons in his arms and his legs completely mangled. It was so bad that when Judo and Guts tried to open up the mask that Griffith had, it was so horrifying. Miura didn't show it to us. Considering the fact that Miura shows us everything, the fact that he didn't show that to us was a little bit aggressive, because I don't know what happened to him. And then Guts started crying, and in that moment you could see Griffith, who had noticed Guts and reached out a hand, and it looked like he wanted to choke him, but I think those range of emotions that were explained before have been popping up now, because you can see as if his eyes squints and there's a bit of sorrow and sadness and almost like acceptance of Guts' pain and sorrows in seeing him that way. But they don't have time, right? Creature number 5 is murdered by Guts as he starts licking his tongue. We just gonna move past him because he's just a vile creature. And we escape the castle. Guts turns into a demon and annihilates everything before his path. The king of, I almost said his name. Creature number 4 appears, and we have the whole scene with the Bakiraka and Charlotte being rescued allegedly. And then, yeah, everything's just a bit of a mess as we're trying to get Griffith out of here. So we get Griffith out. And after we get Griffith out with the survival, this is where we see the true aftermath of everything that's happened. Casca and Guts are tired. They meet up with the Band of Hawk. Everyone's like, this is great. We've got Griffith back. We got him back. But they're still not all the way out yet. And the reason I sighed and the reason I paused is because we have... The only way I can describe this is probably one of the worst things I've ever read in my entire life. There is a section of this arc that I would consider completely unnecessary in every way possible. Creature number 4 decides that I am such a loser, a freak of nature, a disgusting, heinous being, that I'm going to resort to creature number 7, Wild, to get Griffith and kill him. Now, Wild serves no purpose to the story. This guy is disgusting, vulgar, violent, morbid. Everything that he does is reprehensible. As a reader, I'm okay with gore. I read this, stuff like that, right? But this was just too much. This wasn't necessary. Like the villagers that help Griffith and Guts and Casca as they're trying to escape, saying, oh, we'd never sell out the Band of Hawk. We know you guys are heroes. Creature number 7 pulls up, finds him. Not only does he start throwing children in the fire, he cuts them into pieces and then rips the girl and then puts the girl on a stake with her mangled body and the body parts of the villagers, burns it, and then starts chasing after the Band of Hawk. And I'm asking myself this, why do we need that? Why is that necessary? And then throughout this part, we're getting exposed to Nosferatu Zod Part 2, but like literally worse. Everything is worse. Casca almost gets raped for no reason. Wild, I don't know what purpose he's serving besides just, I don't know, a moment for Guts to aura farm. I don't know. I really don't know, because there's so many things that oh my god, man. Oh my god. Just an absolute waste of my time. Just things that I did not need to see, things I can't erase from my memory. This guy was the worst experience I've had in Berserk, and that is saying something considering we have the horse, right? And I'm not going to talk about this damn horse, because this horse, I'm not going to talk about him. But Wild is worse. And it was awful. And honestly, my favorite part about creature number 7 the entire time was the fact that Guts stabbed him in the eye, stabbed him in the throat, and twisted it, and I saw blood everywhere. And the way he died when Zod came up and packed him up and his guts was flying everywhere, I said, this is what I asked for. This is all I needed. You could have taken all of this out and just gave me that, and I would have been all right. Like, I was like, all right, cool. He's dying, his intestines are out, and he's bleeding from his neck and his eyes. Fantastic. But no, we had to get all of that, right? Just to really show. And the reason I'm guessing that Miura put this in there is because he just wanted to highlight the fact that Griffith is supposed to have the egg of the king, which is supposed to call these people that Zod foreshadowed. And Guts is like, Zod, what is this all about? And he said, soon you'll know. And, they're back to aura farming all over again. Now that we've moved past this point, finally, thank God Almighty. The real part that I want to get to is the aftermath of all of that nonsense with creature number 7, which is now they've all escaped. Guts took heavy damage fighting creature number 7. Casca's a little shaken up by it. And it has been now revealed that Griffith is incapable of fighting. The dreams of the Band of Hawk have been crushed for good. Griffith cannot stand. He cannot pick up a sword. The damage has been done. And this causes Casca now to question her goal of being with Guts, to question her goal of, should I really be with him? Should I follow him on his journey? Guts is now questioning his decisions. The Band of Hawk are questioning their decisions. Everyone is heading towards despair yet again, as their ambition of the Band of Hawk coming back has been destroyed yet again. It's a common theme of people's ambitions rising up and being destroyed yet again by this harsh reality of, honestly, two people's decisions, which is insanity to say. But one thing that I find interesting is Griffith during this whole exchange. Griffith overhears the conversation between Guts and Casca and how they harken back to that time where Griffith was talking to Charlotte about what a friend really is to him. And it's just so funny that that keeps being like the center of this whole debacle. And as Griffith hears that, he gets a vision of not only his younger self, but his self back in its prime. The White Hawk of Midland, the White Phoenix. And it's almost as if Griffith hearing Guts and Casca talk about Guts's dream and how Guts is probably gonna have to go on it alone, Griffith is like, well, wait a minute. I've been watching Casca and Guts. I can tell something's going on. There was a time where I had the hearts of anybody. People who hated me, they feared me, or they were in awe of me. People who loved me, they wanted my fellowship and they followed me into battle. But for some reason, with this person, everything's different. And now that everything has been taken away from him, the only thing he has to fall back on yet again is that one solitary dream. And the young version of him is saying, is this where we stop? We still have a dream to uphold. We still have that castle to go for. So broken, bruised, and mangled Griffith takes hold of the carriage, rides all the way down into the lake, where we get to a moment that I find interesting and I like to try to unpack for a while, because he falls into the lake. He realizes that he can't do anything. And it's a beautiful shot. Like, it's just Griffith kneeling down in complete total despair. There's nothing he can do. And he sees this stake in the water, this sharp wooden stake in the water. And he tries to kill himself. And as he's about to kill himself, he basically punks out. He can't do it. And that's where he's reached rock bottom. The tears, he can't do it. There's nothing else left for him in life until that one chance appears. The one thing that he's been missing this entire time, the egg of the king, he finds in the water right next to him, and he picks it up. And as the band of Hawk approach the lake, you see a scenery that can only be described as horror and terror as these monsters start appearing behind Griffith. And as the eclipse starts to happen, things get terrible. Things get terrifying. Griffith is like, no, Guts, please don't, because if you do, we'll never. And I was like, never what? What do you mean? And boom, the eclipse happens. And this is where things get dark. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, man. This is where things get dark, because the eclipse itself is probably one of the most famous moments in manga history for many reasons. One of the things that I find very, very beautiful about the eclipse, and I'm not talking about what actually happens, but it's the art. The double page spreads that we see in the scenery of just, how would I describe it? Morbid. It's like artistically morbid. You have a bunch of human-like faces covering the sky and the floor. You have a area that seems very hellish, very rancid. There's so many words to describe what I'm seeing here. But as things start to shape out, you have the entire band of Hawk that are stuck within this weird morbid area. Everyone's freaking out, everyone's crashing out. You see all these demons start to gather. And as they're gathering, they're talking about a feast, they're talking about a festival. And with Griffith there and Guts there, they're trying to figure out just exactly what's going on. Griffith has an idea of what's going on, but then this is where things get really nasty. So the God Hand appears. We got Slan, we've got Conrad, we've got Void, and I don't remember the other dude's name. I ain't gonna lie. The way they all pulled up, it was just all farming men. I ain't gonna lie. Especially the homeboy that pulled up. The boy's just chilling like this. He's like, bro, like, what you doing? Posing for the gram? Like, grow up, dog. But in that moment, the God Hand basically explained to everyone that this is the festival. This is where people get sacrificed in order to become a demon. And this guy here with the egg of the king is not going to be any regular demon. He's going to be just like us. And he's going to sacrifice all of you guys for his dream. All he needs to do is say the magic words. And everyone's like, no, there's no way Griffith would do that. But then Griffith now is carried up by the God hand and is brought up to the altar. And in this moment, there's a culmination of everything that Griffith has gone through. This is where Griffith has shown visually in the realm of his consciousness the price of his ambition. Here we see corpse upon corpse upon corpse upon corpse that's piled up with the view of that castle that he was so hungry after, that he just wanted for himself. And there's an old lady that gave him the egg of the king in the first place, and she's telling him that all of these bodies, you've trampled on all of these bodies to get to where you are now, and now you want to give up? And young Griffith is like, no, like, I don't want to do that. That's not what, I would never do that. It's too late. And then he sees the young boy that wanted to be a knight, the young boy in Griffith's camp that really left a mark on Griffith earlier on in that backstory Casca shared about Griffith. And in that, young Griffith tries to convince him that he can still be a knight, but he realizes he's already dead. And in that moment, he's starting to regret everything he did. And the old lady's like, why would you regret it? Because if you regret it and you turn back, you're just going to turn into a corpse. So you might as well just go all the way. Is this how far your ambition is going to take you? And you see the imagery of young Griffith now his flesh is starting to erode, and it's starting to just, it's very morbid and decrepit. Like you can see his body decaying, and it's terrifying for him. And it's in that moment where Griffith realizes something. Like he said before, like he said to Casca in that pool of water, thousands of people have died for my dream. Thousands of people have lost their lives. I've sacrificed so many people. I have ensnared people. I have made people fear me. I have killed as many people as I had to get up to this point. And the only thing that took me off my path, the only thing that made me forget my dream, that made me forget my ambition, is one man. And it was an image of Guts. And in that moment, the image of Griffith was stone cold. Like, do you remember what Guts and Griffith fought? And Griffith said, that resolve, is that how much you want to leave me? When Guts had decided, this is the path I'm going to take regardless of how you feel about it, because anyone that opposes my dream would resist it body and soul. Isn't it funny that Griffith is now making the exact same face? Steeled resolve, cold, calculated, and he's opposing someone who's standing before his dream, body and soul. And he says those words, I sacrifice. And then everything begins. Another point that I want to mention while Griffith is about to make this choice that's going to ultimately cost the lives of the Band of Hawk, it's important to know that even though the old lady in his vision that's showing him all the dead bodies and everything that he's done to get up to this point, it is the God Hand that is influencing this. You see Conrad and the other God Hand, I keep forgetting his name, but you have the two God Hand that are wearing the mask of the old lady in Griffith's vision. And it can almost seem as though, okay, these are agents of causality, so they're kind of making Griffith do it, they're kind of pushing him towards his fate, but ultimately this is a conscious decision from Griffith. Griffith thinks about everything that he's done, all the people that have died, the boy that was killed because of the sake of his ambition, the fact that what it would cost him, he knows what it would cost. It would cause the death of the Band of Hawk. It would cost his friendship with Guts. It would cost the death of Casca. It would cost a lot. But in that moment, as he's being pushed towards making a decision, Griffith consciously remembers that one thing that I emphasized. It is you that made me forget my dream. Therefore, I sacrifice. I make this decision. Yes, it's in the favor of the God Hand for him to make that decision, but at the end of the day, Griffith did what he wanted. He's taken up, and now he's being transformed. And in that moment, one man's ambition has now caused a scene that one can only describe. And I'll just let the panel do the talking, because it's so funny. I literally bookmarked it. Oh, there it is. Wonderful. All the demons get excited. It's time for the feast. It's time for the sacrifice. Everyone gets the brand. And because of one man's ambition, everybody is met with despair. Look at that. That, my friends, is fear. That, my friends, is only something that can be described as hell. I'm not gonna go through the gory details of how vile and disgusting the eclipse is because I think we all at least know about it. I wanted to pause and at least mention Judo here because I think Judo is another character that suffers, unfortunately, due to, you know, the decisions of Guts and Griffith. I think Judo is someone that understood everyone, and Judo kind of understood everything that was going on around him. He seemed to understand what was going on with Guts. He seemed to understand what was going on with Griffith. He seemed to be the one that really had the most emotional intelligence out of the entire group. And at the same time, he still had his own goals. He still had his own dreams. But at the end of it all, he sacrifices himself for Casca in a way where you kind of realize that he had feelings for Casca, but he never had the opportunity to share it. But at the bare minimum, what he could do is he could risk his life for Casca, save Casca, because it's really sad when you think about someone that's so good, someone that has been such a light in the story, and he suffers brutally at the hands of Griffith and Guts, right? And again, I know it sounds unfair to really put Guts in this category, but Guts is the one that kind of set off this chain of events, unfortunately. And it's one of those things where your intentions may not be bad, but at the end of the day, if you don't consider all of the consequences of your actions, you can lead to a really, really bad demise, and people that you love, people that you care about, can get hurt. And Judo is just like Casca in this case, where Judo is unfortunately very much an innocent party here. Very, very innocent. So I just really wanted to say something about Judo here. It's a shame. It really is. We all know what happens. We all know the price that Guts and Casca pay for Griffith's decision. Casca is brutally assaulted in a way that can only be described as morbid, disgusting, and evil. Even Slan points it out, saying this is just a perfect picture of evil, as Griffith is hatefully. All the swirl of emotions that was mentioned while he was in prison, you can see it all forming as he's looking at Guts and saying, I'm going to destroy and take everything from you because you made me forget the one thing that matters, and now that I have it, I'm going to do the same thing to you. I'm going to launch you into despair. I'm going to launch Casca into despair. I'm going to take everything. But one thing that I really want to highlight during this hellish event is the way Miura is able to capture darkness, death, morbidity, if that's even a word, just the hopelessness of the eclipse. Everything is super dark shaded. Everything is morbid, disgusting. The crunching and gnashing of teeth, the pulling apart of bodies, just the different ways to be eaten and devoured. The many faces of Guts, full on enraged at everything that he's seeing. You're seeing that full on, what's the word I'm looking for? It's apoplectic, enraged. I gotta read a dictionary, man, because there's nothing I can do to explain the rage and wrath and despair that's on this man's face as he experiences his love being taken not by every beast, not just by the beasts and demons before him, because Casca, the price Casca pays is so heavy, it breaks my heart. I think for someone that really was innocent, for someone that really just found herself caught in between the will, dream, and drive of two singular-minded men, breaks my heart. It's really a tragedy what happens to her, and I really just think Miura, if I'm gonna be honest, it just was a little too much for me for her to get brutally assaulted by those demons and then to get brutally assaulted by Griffith in front of the one that she just loved and connected with. It makes the waterfall scene so much sadder, honestly, that someone can experience such vulnerability and acceptance and then to be violated at such a violent way. And the only reprieve we really get is the fact that the Skull Knight decides now it's time to ore farm after everything that's happened because he was fighting Zod outside this giant tornado and said, well, time to farm. And he saves Guts and Casca and they run away, right? But at the end of the day, the deed is done. The job is done. Griffith has now been given the power to once again reclaim his ambition. He has sacrificed everything and everyone for the sake of his ambition. and it has left irreplaceable and irreparable damage to those that he once called friend. But the message here is that for some reason, ambition, which one would normally think is a good thing, can be very much miscued as a bad thing if it's not held in check. If you forsake the real things that matter, like relationship and camaraderie and the well-being of your fellow man for the sake of ambition, what Miura is really telling us here that the common theme and the common ending is despair. Whether it is relationships that you thought would be yours, which has now been ruined because someone's ambition has taken it away from you. Whether the fact that you neglected your friendships for the sake of your ambition, so much so that that friend leaves you, and now because that friend has left you, you're falling into despair. And now because the consequences of your actions, which led to your loss of ambition, has brought those friends back, but because of your loss of ambition and their loss of ambition, now they're in despair. You notice like the constant theme that's being painted here: goals, pain, suffering. It's almost as if it almost makes you just want to stay home and eat some popcorn and pizza and chill out with your homeboys. It almost makes you appreciate the simple things in life. Sometimes maybe you gotta be a little bit like Corcus, but you don't want to end up like Corcus, because the way he ended up in that eclipse, not good. Not good at all. So we move on from the eclipse, and the aftermath of it is very, very tragic, because as Guts wakes up from this horrific event, obviously the Skull Knight saved him, Skull Knight saved Ricket, and now they are back with Goto and Erika in the mountains. Guts is faced with the horrific memories of everything that's gone on. And in that time, he finds himself in a very similar situation that we had at the beginning of this whole arc with Gambino. When Guts was in the field looking up at the moon and wondering where his place in life would be. This time, Guts is now on all fours, facing the grass, in a what can only be deemed as a very cold, dark setting with the moon in the back, but he's not looking at the moon anymore. He's lamenting everything that he's gone through. It's almost as if you could see Guts laying down there, take a time machine, go to the future, and just see where he ends up. And if he saw where he'd end up, he'd be like, you know what, maybe I should just let them wolves eat me. Honestly, maybe. I'm not gonna lie. That probably would have been a good decision for him. I want to talk a little bit about Goto here. Rickard is being shown the armory of Goto, and he sees this giant slab of iron called the Dragon Slayer. And we get a story about how Goto in his young age was making a lot of great weapons for royals and nobles. But there was a task that one king asked Goto, which was, hey, can you create a sword that could kill a dragon? And in that moment, Goto had spent all his time creating all kinds of swords and weaponry for killing, but Goto saw this as a challenge because he's like, wow, I need to envision this, because what is a dragon? Do dragons actually exist? And what is a weapon that would kill a dragon? So he created this giant sword, this giant slab of iron, and ultimately they didn't like it because they're like, well, who can wield this? How do we even know this is going to kill a dragon? Nobody can actually use this thing. At the end of the day, Goto was cast out. He's like, bro, this is nonsense. And he went into hiding, and this is kind of where he's ended up. So he looks at this giant slab of iron as a reminder of not getting too ahead of himself, not getting caught up in fantasy. And in this moment, he portrays this slab of iron, this Dragon Slayer, as useless. Just a hunk of iron that really serves no purpose and serves no meaning. Now, it's so funny that this theme is tied here, because at the end of the day, there is somebody out there that's life was identified by the sword. That's life was identified by a fight for survival. He was born in struggle, and now he's currently in struggle. And as we see that there's still a remnant of the eclipse hunting Casca and Guts due to the brand mark, they are under attack. Guts is given this sword that, probably as good as his old one, but it's not enough to defeat this evil monster until he finds the Dragon Slayer. And he sees this, and he's like, whoa, Goto, you've been holding out on me. This is perfect. And he slays, completely annihilates the monster. Now, what's important here is that Guts has now found a new tool, a new sword, to accompany him on his new path and his new journey. One of the quotes that I love here is that, what is a dragon? And a dragon is probably something that people believe humans cannot beat. But now the question is, what is a human called that can actually beat a dragon? And now Guts is saying, all right, so this is something that I can use to forge my path ahead. I can use this now because my new fight, my new war is not over. The Band of Hawk is not dead yet, Rickard. I still have a goal. I still have a purpose, and that is to kill the enemy. To go on my journey yet again, despite my despair. Guts' new ambition now is to fight the war that is before him. Honestly, as he was doing before, with a new sword that's going to keep him company everywhere he goes. So this whole loop of I'm finding my identity in my sword, it's still continuing. Who Guts is has not really changed, but now his goals have changed. Now, instead of filled with yearning for identity, now he's filled with rage and yearning for revenge. And where is this gonna take him? You'd have to find out. You'd have to read past Golden Age. But I just found that very interesting, that despite all the horrific things that happened, Guts is now walking a very similar path that he walked before all of the despair happened. The theme of everything that happens here really is confounded upon when the Skull Knight runs into Guts again, as all these spirits are starting to form around him, all these evil spirits, because of the brand that he's been given by Griffith. He now has to fight for his life. And the Skull Knight gives him this sword and said, from this moment now, you are caught between the real world and the astral world. From now on, you will spend the rest of your life struggling and fighting for your life every night, because these guys will hunt you until the day you die, because they are after your blood. And in that moment, it's so funny how things come full circle. Guts said, so this is war, and I will fight this war because now I have this sword again. And it's so funny because this is all Guts has ever known. This is all he's ever been, is a man with a sword that's surviving. He said that with Casca. He's now chosen another battle. His new battle that he's gonna fight for the rest of the life involves sword in hand and fighting for his life, just the way he wanted. It's just that now this path, this ambition that he had, is led him down a path and journey of despair and sorrow and constant fighting and constant struggle. And poor Casca suffering a miscarriage because of the man that she loved and the man whose dream she followed possessed and corrupted the child that she had with the man that she found a new hope in. Casca's story can only be described as the price paid of someone caught in the ambitions of two great men. And Casca's despair is something that we can only see in the tears that she shares with the miscarriage that she has, with the loss of her psyche, the loss of who she is, the loss of her identity, Guts' loss of someone, the only person that he felt vulnerable with, the only person that he felt comfortable touching him. It's an arc that really just puts you down, brings you back up, puts you down again, and then somehow leaves you in a place where you're like, well, I'm pretty sure I got something from this, but for some reason I'm still depressed. It's also a beautiful tale. It's a beautiful story of how the ambition of any human being can be good and good intentioned, right? But it's, at the end of the day, also morally ambiguous. Is your ambition for the sake of yourself, or is it for the benefit of the others? And I think one of the things that I found very interesting about Guts and Griffith is that their ambition was mainly for the sake of themselves. Their ambition had nothing to do with their fellow man. It had nothing to do with those around them. So it's no surprise that the ambition that only involves self-gain destroys everyone else around them. And I really think that's the message that I've taken from this. And Casca, who has just ended up sacrificing herself for other people as well, got destroyed in the process. The one big takeaway that we should take from this story, from this beautiful arc, from this masterpiece that Miura wrote, is that despite how well you know somebody, despite how well you know these characters, always check to see what their true motivations are. What are their goals? What are their ambitions? What are their values? And those values will let you know where they're ultimately going to end up. If their values and their goals end up only being for them at the cost of others, run away. If their value is only about who I am and what matters to me, run away. Because if you don't, you might end up getting massacred by a bunch of demons.